I want to welcome everybody live to Hawkeye Hangout here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. We got a very special show this evening planned, and of course, as you can see on my screen to your right, it is Brad Heinrichs, CEO of the Swarm Collective. And Brad, first of all, thank you for taking a late evening to talk Hawkeye sports, Hawkeye athletics, and this crazy thing now called NIL. Welcome to the show, Brad.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I want to give everybody a rundown of what we're doing here this evening. First of all, we've got about 66 people watching now. Be sure to first, as always, share this show out on social media if you're enjoying the content. Of course, others will as well. You got two ways to call in. You can call in by phone at 515-635-1601. We've just got the one line open, but unlimited lines by means of StreamYard. So if you click the link in the description below, I'll also throw it up in the live chat for everybody. Unlimited lines up. So as soon as you call in by means of StreamYard, you'll be able to basically join the queue, and then we'll get you on. And here's the deal. As Brad and I talked about right before we jumped on, anything goes as far as questions, but I want to make everybody plainly aware of this. There may be certain questions that Brad's not able to answer, either because he doesn't feel comfortable answering, or he simply doesn't have the answer or is not at liberty to answer a question. And full disclosure, I have not given, I gave Brad an idea of, I gave you an idea, Brad, of some of the topics I wanted to cover, but I'm the type of person that might throw you a curveball. If you can't answer it, you can't answer it. But I think this will give everybody a good idea of where we're at with NIL, with this collective. And I really want to start from the beginning. We already have a caller waiting on hold, but I want to ask you before we get into questions from our viewers. Brad, tell us, first of all, exactly what you do as the CEO of the Swarm Collective. Can you give us an idea? I know you are a busy guy, but can you give us a brief summary of what your job is for Iowa Athletics? No, I know you're not directly working for Iowa Athletics, but give us a kind of a background here.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, Corey, I do not work for Iowa Athletics. And to be fair, this wasn't something that I originally intended to do. In fact, it's one of those things where I offered to help some guys that were doing this, and my help apparently impressed them enough to where they said, you know what, you're the guy for this. We're stepping aside, and it's all yours now, which was not my intention. But to answer your question specifically, what I do, I head up really two separate organizations under the umbrella of what we call Swarm. And the first organization is called the Swarm Collective. And one of the reasons I got involved in this in the first place is, well, one of them, the main one is that I'm an actuary by trade. I've got my own, I own a national actuarial firm, and I have some experience in building companies and running organizations. And so when I offered to help, I thought, hey, I can help these guys get it going and then turn over the keys. Unfortunately, they didn't want the keys back. But in any event, so this organization called the Swarm Collective, it's one where the student athletes can profit on their name, image, and likeness. That's what NIL stands for. It does not stand for now it's legal. The SEC thinks that it stands for now it's legal. But we here in the Big Ten, know that it stands for name, image, and likeness.
And by the way, for anybody who doesn't know, you are in SEC. You're in the heart of SEC country.
I'm right in the heart. I live in Southwest Florida in Fort Myers, so I get to deal with the SEC folks all the time. But in any event, as I was kind of mentioning before, one of the reasons I got into this is because I wanted to do this the right way. And the right way, I thought, would be to figure out a way to take this NIL thing that has very negative connotation amongst Iowa fans and just sports fans in general, and try to turn it into some good for the Southeast Iowa community. And so I created the Swarm Collective, and essentially what we do is we pay football players, men's basketball players, and women's basketball players to go do charity work. Today, if you were looking at the Iowa Swarm Instagram or Twitter posts, we had some football players delivering Meals on Wheels to people that aren't able to get out and do their own shopping for themselves. We're scheduling events all the time. We pay the players; they do the charity work. Sometimes they'll go to, say, the United Way and sign a bunch of autographs, and we sell the autographs for whatever the number is, and all the monies that we raise go to the United Way, for example. Those are the kinds of things that we're doing. We're trying to raise money for charity. We're trying to do work for charity, help out the community, and at the same time allow these student athletes to make money on their name, image, and likeness. So I help the fundraising efforts, getting donors to give us money, and by the way, it's tax deductible. And then I help Jane Oswald, our events coordinator, help plan the events, run the events. And then that's where the student athletes get paid. That's where we help the charities, that sort of thing. So that's sort of the first component of it. The second component is where, and by the way, the collective, I should say, each student athlete in football, on the football team, the basketball team, whether they are the leading scorer or the quarterback, or whether they are third string, they each have the same opportunity. So the idea there is to make it somewhat socialized, where every student athlete has the same opportunity to earn the same amount of money on a monthly basis. And that has been really effective, because now you don't have there's no jealousy in the locker room. Hey, they all get the same opportunity, so on and so forth. Then I have this other organization, still under the Swarm, where what I'm trying to do there is to take maybe the more decorated or accomplished student athletes in those three sports and hook them up with local businesses, national businesses, whoever you may come up with, usually corporations that are willing to sponsor a particular athlete to help them do marketing or what have you for that organization. This is where your studs get paid, so to speak. That's that piece of it. So you have the socialistic, all for charity piece, and then you have the piece where Hy-Vee or whoever could pay a student athlete to do marketing or whatever for them, and we help facilitate that. We help provide the legal work. We protect the student athletes so that they're not signing legal documents that might put them in bad shape for the rest of their career. We're just looking out for the student athletes, trying to help them maximize their NIL opportunities. Both of the organizations are nonprofits. There's nothing in this for me other than I want the Hawks to win, man. That's it. I want the Hawks to win. I want these kids to do well. I want to help the community as best I possibly can. That's your, I don't know if that's brief or not, but that's kind of the overview of what I'm trying to accomplish.
No, I appreciate that, Brad. And can you give us, I know you said you obviously have a history and a record, a resume that features the ability to build business, build an organization, but did you grow up in the state of Iowa? I know you live in Florida now.
No, I grew up in the Kansas City area. I'm a former student athlete. If we consider golf part of if golf is a sport, then I'm a former student athlete. I played on the golf team at Iowa from 92 to 97. So I'm plenty old at this point.
Who said golf? Who's making the claim that golf isn't a sport?
Oh, talk to any football player or basketball player. They'll tell me all the time that golf doesn't count as a sport. A lot of them will tell me that any sport that you can drink while you're doing it is not a sport. It's kind of hard to argue, but that's what they say. In any event, I didn't do any drinking while I was playing that sport for the University of Iowa. Let's make that clear.
So what made you pick Iowa, I guess? Flash back to when you made that decision.
Well, this is kind of embarrassing since you asked. I'll tell you the truth. Your 17 and 8-year-old minds are different than what you would normally think. But most of my family went to the University of Oklahoma. Oklahoma was ranked 1 or 2 in the country, and they didn't want me as a scholarship athlete on their golf team, and it was the Big 8 at the time. And so I, instead of going to one of the other Big 8 schools that they all basically wanted me there, I said, I don't want to play against Oklahoma. I want to go outside the conference. So I went to the Big 10 and went to Iowa. That just shows you just how juvenile my mind was. It helped that there was an actuarial science program at Iowa. That was something that I wanted to do once my golf tenure ended.
So flash forward to the conception of this collective.
Yep.
And you talked about how your initial intent was to kind of help things get going, help people get this thing started, and maybe provide some good insight in certain areas. How much time does this involve, though, Brad? You're a guy you still obviously have to work to support yourself. How much time does the Swarm Collective and everything that encompasses that project, how much time does that take?
I'd say I'd probably spend 30 to 40 hours a week on this. Probably spend.
And you're telling me
50 hours a week on my real job. So it's.
This is not you're not a public employee, so you don't have to answer this question. But Are you saying that you don't get anything from this? Is there?
I don't take a salary. Corey, I don't take a salary. We have 2 full-time employees who are paid. I don't take a salary. In fact, I've donated 6 figures to this because I want it to be successful. This is philanthropic for me. And so what am I getting from this? To be honest, I'm getting great relationships. I've got to meet some of the really cool student athletes in our programs. I've gotten to know the coaches like really well. All of them, quite frankly, not all of them, but most of them. I feel like I'm a part of the success and failure of each of these programs. And so as a Hawkeye fan, I mean, what's better? I feel like I'm inside the huddle. It's what it feels like. And so, my fandom, my inner Hawkeye fan, and this is fun for me. This is a hobby, and it's an expensive hobby and a time-consuming hobby, but it's a labor of love.
Well, we appreciate you taking that under, and I know a lot of people have been confused as to, or not even confused, but disappointed in the direction that NIL as a whole has taken. We hear the term Wild Wild West, and you talked about the two different facets of this collective specifically. Just for the people that don't understand, because I know there are still people who don't understand. Can you just real quickly again give everybody a brief explanation the difference between pay for play and what this collective is and what you're doing?
Yeah, pay for play would be, Corey, you're the starting quarterback for the Hawkeyes. I'm going to give you $100,000 for being the starting quarterback, or I'm gonna, and that's you're not doing anything for it. You're just playing football, and I'm just going to pay you to play football. That's not what we're doing. Each of these kids that get NIL deals has to do something. They have to do marketing for the organization that they're doing that they've contracted with. It could be, for example, it could be like, well, you guys have probably seen that Riverside or Elite Casinos, I guess is what they are, the parent organization. Elite Casinos is giving us $500,000. And for that $500,000, these kids are going to do a whole lot of work through some of the charities that they're affiliated with. These kids are going to do work for the money. They're not going to just be on the team or be a good player. So that's the difference, is that I'm trying to make them do good things for the community as best as possible. I'm trying to help them earn money for the corporations who are sponsoring them. I want them to earn their keep, so to speak, to get this money. They're not just getting it for being a Hawkeye athlete.
And now we're going to start the questions that you may not be able to answer.
Let them rip.
So the first thing that came to my mind, Brad, and you're talking about this, is I'll give you a perfect example, and I think the cat's out of the bag that Kade McNamara, NIL, was a part of that. Is that safe to say? NIL was a part of Iowa being able to land Kade McNamara more than just the part of the collective where he's paid like everyone else. Yeah. Is it fair to say the other part of the collective played a big role in him coming here?
Yes, I mean, Kade. I can't talk about the specifics of Kade's deals, but what I can say is that if it wasn't for the swarm, I'm not sure that Kade would have come. I mean, he may have. We will never know. But it was part of something he wanted to know about when he was trying to decide where to go. And he wanted to know what kind of war chest we have at the swarm. And he wanted to know what kind of opportunities he may have when he comes here. And what we had, and we were probably, I guess, 5 or 6 months in at that time, we had assembled enough that he was impressed. In fact, he's even said, I think on another podcast with Jordan Palmer, he basically said that our collective is better than Michigan's. And I'm not sure it'll be that way for long. Michigan probably watched that podcast and said, all right, we're not going to let the little Iowa people beat us. So they're probably building an empire as we speak. But he was impressed by what we had put together. I think if you talk to him today, I think he would sing the praises of the swarm.
All right, before we get to our first caller, I'm going to warn you again, Brad, that this is an open. I don't have a call screener here, so we may get.
Oh, that's fine.
people.
I expect them to ask me about Brian Ferentz at least in the first 2 or 3 calls.
Well, I'm going to ask you about. You were wrong. I'm going to ask you about.
Go ahead.
Before we get to Brian, we may get to a caller who's got nothing better to do but to troll. So let's just see what we got here. Let's get to our first caller.
Ahead.
Thank you for calling Hawkeye Hangout here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
I'm horny as hell.
All righty. Case in point. And I made him wait for 25 seconds, Brad. So or 25 minutes, excuse me. So the call line is back open, folks. If you want to give us a call, 515-635-1601. So you brought up Brian Ferentz. I mean, I see the comments in the chat. I mean, you got to address it. I have talked about Brian at length. Had different people tell me different things. It seems like every day I hear something different. And of course, you're filtering through, okay, who's a credible source on this, who's not. You're obviously very in touch with the program, Brad. So I think it's more than fair to ask you your take on the situation. And to our caller that just called in, I'm going to put you on a brief hold. Can you give us an idea of where you stand with what you think is going to happen with the staff? Are we business as normal? Do you foresee a situation where Brian is considering taking a job at the next level somewhere else? Where do you stand on the Brian Ferentz situation?
Well, let's make sure we're clear on one thing, and that is I don't control who the coaching staff is on any sport. I help support whatever staff is there. So let's just make sure we're clear about that. I'm probably more in tune with the players than I am about who's going to be the coach and whatnot. But having said that, from my intel and what I know, and don't shoot the messenger here for some of you people. I'm pretty sure Brian Ferentz is going to be back. Is it a done deal yet? I don't think that it is, but I get the in my understanding is that's the direction we're headed. So things can change. It's a fluid situation, but that's where I think things are headed. I think that he'll be back as the offensive coordinator. I think that there's going to be some changes to the way that we approach offense with Kade McNamara. He's dynamic. He's a little bit different type of player than what we've had in the past, and so with some different personnel, I think the Hawkeye fans will see something a bit different than what they've seen the last couple of years, at least, hopefully. And but I do believe that he'll be back as the offensive coordinator. That's my if I was in Vegas and I had to make a bet, is he back or is he not? I'm putting my chips on he'll be back.
And you care to give it? How confident are you in that?
Enough to make a pretty big bet.
Okay. With that being said, you said you think he'll be back as OC. So do you foresee any? I know again, you have the right.
Again, it's a bet. It's not. This isn't a. Sure. The game hasn't been played. It's not a done deal at this point. Yeah. So I don't know. You're asking me to where am I going to put my wager if I'm in Vegas? I'm going to put him on him being back. I think he'll be offensive coordinator. Yeah, I think he'll be offensive coordinator. Yes.
Okay. And he'll be calling run game, pass game, all that.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be. The one thing people don't really, a lot of people don't know is that there are limits to the number of coaches that you can have on the staff, and so they can't just go out of the blue and say, hey, I want to bring on whoever to be the pass game coordinator or whatever. They could bring someone on to be a pass game coordinator, but then somebody else on the staff has to leave.
Exactly. I've had that conversation with so many people, Brad. Promote John Budmeyer, make him the passing. So who are you firing? You got to let somebody go. Are you going to fire Kelton Copeland? Are you going to fire George Barnett? Those are two position groups that have struggled. It's not that simple as you just said. I don't think people realize that.
Yeah, it's not. And I didn't realize that either until probably the last 6 months when I've asked about, hey, why don't you hire a coach to do this? And they're like, well, you'll have a limit on number of coaches. So
right.
I'm learning too.
How surprised? Final question on this, and we'll move on. At least final question from me.
Sure.
How surprised will you be if tomorrow we get an announcement that Brian Ferentz has been hired by, the New England Patriots?
Shocked.
You'll be shocked. Okay.
I'll be shocked. I mean, let's put it this way: it would be a turn of events. But
yeah,
again, it could happen. It could happen. I'm not. I don't know everything. It could happen. Would it surprise me? Yes. And if that did happen, I would. I think I would know who the next offensive coordinator would be.
Okay.
John Budmeyer.
Okay. You're gonna drop the name here.
Well, I mean, that's who I would bet. I mean, that's just who I would think. I mean, again, that's all speculative. That nobody's told me that. That's totally my. This is Brad's opinion.
Sure.
What I know about John is, and I've listened. I've actually sat in a room listening to that guy. He's really bright. Very good coach. He can't be on the field, but he can be in the position room meetings and whatnot. He's a really bright guy. He's turned down offensive coordinator jobs. And I don't know that he would do that if he thought that he was just going to be a, consultant forever at Iowa. So I think that he would be a good or an adequate, I don't know what you want to call it. I think that he would be a good addition to the staff if someone were to leave. But again, someone has to leave before that even has a possibility. So
he has turned down offensive coordinator jobs at the Power 5 level, at the FBS level, Division 1 level. Can you
Division 1 level? I don't know. I don't know specifically which positions. I don't know.
Because Brad,
I know he's a pretty coveted guy.
You know how I would challenge you on this, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I don't know much about John Budmeyer other than he's married into the Hartlieb family and he coached with Paul Cress and he was the OC. But my argument the other way would say I don't love that hire simply because he was a quarterbacks coach at Wisconsin. They were okay. I know they had a really good year. I think it was Alex Hornibrook when he had a record-setting year, and then he was an OC for 1 year, and Colorado State's offense was terrible. So that's how I would challenge you back. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I don't know that hire would make people on the outside happy.
And I guess what I would tell you is I'm not here to argue whether it's a good hire or not hire. I've had firsthand experience with him, and I was impressed. When I say I was impressed, I couldn't understand a word that was being said amongst these quarterbacks. They have all this. I mean, it's like a different language that they talk about. I'm just telling you what I think would happen, not necessarily whether it was. If I was the coach, this is what I would do. I'm just telling you what I think would happen.
Sure, and I'm just giving you the other perspective. But you also, it sounds like you believe that Kirk and the Iowa staff think very highly of John. I mean, there's a reason why
I do think they think very high. I know they think highly of John, and they value his input, or they wouldn't have him on as a consultant because, as you know, they haven't had, for Kirk's 24 years, how many years have they had a consultant? I don't know that. I think Budmeyer may be the only one. Have they had other consultants? Maybe they have, and I just don't know it.
They have analysts every year, but not. I don't know. I'd have to look. I don't know that they've had somebody with the resume of a Budmeyer who's working in that capacity. I mean, your vantage point would be better than mine. I know there's analysts every year, but he certainly is someone. He there's a reason why he became a big talking point last summer because of where he'd been, who he'd worked with.
Well, and I'll also say this too. Another reason why I think that he might be next up. He has a very close relationship with the McNamaras and Kade,
right? Because
he recruited Kade's brother to Colorado State. And so, and I think that Budmeyer had something to do, a lot to do with Kade wanting to come here and feeling comfortable here because he knows, there's a degree of comfort there that he knows what kind of coaching he's going to be getting. And so, it's sort of a natural that Budmeyer might be, next up if there was a next up.
Cole says that you are George Barnett's doppelganger. You kind of resemble. There's some resemblance there, a little bit.
Yeah, I know a whole lot less about coaching the offensive line than he does. I'll tell you that. I don't know. I'm big and fat, but I don't know anything about coaching offensive line.
You calling George Barnett fat?
I said I'm big and fat, not George.
So I guess to expound on that, you already put your chips down on Brian Ferentz will be back. He'll be back as the OC.
My prediction. We'll see if I'm right.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. You're no guarantee, and as you admitted, you're not. You're not. I guess in Kirk Ferentz's mind per se. As it relates to the rest of the staff, do you foresee any staff changes?
I don't.
Okay. Let's get to our first caller who's on hold. Thank you for calling Hawkeye Hangout here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Hey, Corey, it's Zach. How's it going?
Good. How are you, Zach?
Good. So no trolling here. Couple questions I have, and then I'll let you get to some other callers.
Yep.
First one I have is, I know he had mentioned the three major sports: football, men's basketball, women's basketball. How involved are, I think they call it the quote-unquote non-revenue sports, baseball, softball, golf, field hockey, and all that. How much of that is in, if that is in the collective or not? And then secondly, is there like vetting processes and stuff to make sure that, I don't want to sound like a Debbie Downer, like something nefarious might not happen behind the scenes, maybe pay a little extra to throw a game or something like that. Just kind of that background of what NIL is. So
wait, hold on a second.
Thanks for taking go ahead.
Before you get off, that next question, that second question, can you expound on that? You're talking about who's paying, who might be paying extra to throw a game?
Like if there was someone, involved in that corporation who would say, hey, I'll pay a little extra to not win kind of thing.
Brad, you have any, is that ever?
Well, I mean, I guess my answer I'll answer them both. The first question about the minor sports, we don't, and by the way, I'm a former golfer, so the non-revenue sports are near and dear to my heart. Okay. But I want to make sure that our revenue producing sports are super competitive. And if I included all the sports and I raised money for all the sports and gave money and paid to all the student athletes to do charity work, what I'm paying per head would be pretty small. It would dilute the donations. And what would happen then is that our revenue producing sport players would not get enough to probably want to stay. And we would have a mass exodus and have roster retention problems. And so we don't cover the minor sports. And that's one of the reasons why, that's one of the things that the athletic department wishes I would do differently and that would make them feel better about Title IX issues and those kinds of things. The part about the throwing the game, I guess my answer to that was that could happen. That could happen before that happened before NIL. Boston College, for example. I think that could still happen. I can tell you that the organizations that I have dealt with that have contracted with players, they're usually led by Hawkeye fans, and that's the absolute last thing on their mind. Instead, they're wanting to make the players stick around and feel valued as players at Iowa, not to do something nefarious that might help them win a bet, if you will. So I'm not any more worried about that than I was before NIL. So.
Gotcha.
Anything else, Zach?
Nope, that's all I had. Thanks for the good work, and you have a nice evening.
Thank
Go
you,
Hawks. Yeah.
Absolutely. Go Hawks. Couple questions here in our chat. Again, this is probably going to fall into the I can't answer umbrella, but we'll see what happens. Jesse wants to know, is Caitlin Clark the highest paid NIL Iowa athlete?
I don't think that's a far stretch, but I don't have the details of Caitlin's NIL deals. Her NIL deals were most of all of them, I think, were signed, sealed, and delivered before the swarm even came into existence. So, believe this or not, Caitlin hasn't called me up to share with me the details of her of her NIL deals. So I don't have the answer to that question, but I think that it would be reasonable to assume that that's the case. Again, I can't confirm nor deny, but that would be my guess if I was having to guess.
Is it fair to say that as great as what you're doing, Caitlin Clark might not need the swarm?
Oh, I don't think she needs the swarm. She's doing great on her own. And quite frankly, I'm fine if other student athletes don't go through the swarm. This isn't a competition for me. This isn't a for-profit business. I'm here to help. And so that's kind of the way I view it. If someone wants to do a deal outside of the swarm, then by all means do it if that's where they want to go. If they do it through the swarm, I'm going to make sure that the all the back end reporting is legit and put together. I'm going to make sure that the contract that they're signing is in their best interest. That's not going to put handcuffs on them later. I'm going to be looking out for them. But some folks would rather do their own thing, and that's fine. That's up to them.
Number of folks to call is 515-635-1601. You can join by video. You don't have to have your video on, I guess, but you can have it off. But by StreamYard, click the link in the live chat that I threw up there. And, of course, it's in the description below as well. And people active in the chat early here. I see Gary wants to know, how involved with recruiting is the Swarm Collective? You talked about extra incentives for certain student athletes, Brad, but certainly when NIL, that initiative officially came into place for college athletics, NIL, I don't think a lot of people, maybe some people did, I don't think a lot of people wanted it to turn into a recruiting incentive. The reality is I think it has. Can you expound on that and how much
it's a really good question. And the rule is that, and it's a crazy one, you're not supposed to induce a student athlete to come to your school with NIL money. Okay, that's the rule.
So what's the loophole?
It's the most broken rule, I think, in the NIL world. And to some, if you talk to some collective people, they would say, the way that they view the rule is, well, it's kind of like the way they view the speed limit. If it's the speed limit, it's 70 and everybody's driving 80, it's okay to drive 80. That's the way a lot of the people have approached it. With that said, we are very involved. When I say very involved, student athletes, while we're not there trying to induce them, student athletes, whether it's a Kade McNamara, Eric All, any of these guys, they NIL might be part of their decision-making process, and they're going to want to know about NIL. How does the NIL program at Iowa work? What are these two umbrellas? What are these about? What are other people getting? What kind of deals could I expect if I was going to be at Iowa? Those are fair questions, and those are things that these recruits want to hear about, and so I do get involved from that standpoint. They want to know what kind of war chest we have. How much money have you raised? What's the future going to look like here for me if I'm there? Those are very fair questions, and those are the questions that I get all the time. Now there are some kids that do not care about NIL money. I'll give you a perfect one. If Jack Campbell was coming out of high school and he was as coveted as he is coming out of college, I would still tell you that dude would not care about NIL money. That's just the way the guy is wired. He doesn't care. It's not about the money. Tyler Linderbaum's basically the same way, right? I think he took his NIL money and gave it to the hospital. There are people that are just wired differently. Some people, the financial piece is a part of their decision-making process. For others, it's just not anything that they want to consider. And it's just like, let me just say this, Corey. College athletics is becoming just like my company and other companies out there, meaning that I pay them something and they talk to other people at other firms, my competitors, And if they know that they can make more money working for one of my competitors, what are they going to do? They're going to leave to go work there unless they think that their opportunity is just that much better here. They enjoy it that much more, whatever. But a lot of people, there's a lot of people that are going to follow their best financial interests. And that's the new world of college athletics as well. I don't know that I can necessarily blame a kid for that, because it's the same kind of mindset that you or I might have working in the corporate world.
Great answer. No, I so many people want to, compare it to professional sports, but the reality is, there's a salary cap, right? Is that kind of the big difference right now with where college athletics is? And there are contracts that keep guys in a certain organization, and there are salary caps to avoid the discrepancy between, the Alabamas of the world and the Vanderbilts, or you know what I'm saying there. There's a difference, right?
Yeah, well, the crazy part is there is no salary cap, right? There's not. I guess in that case, it's like baseball, right? To some level, that there is no salary cap. And now there's also free agency, and the free agency is for anybody. They don't have to sit out. And so if you think about it, so they're free to leave at any time. That's just the case. And they don't have to sit out anymore like they used to. And by the way, that would be a great solution to make people sit out again, because then I don't think the transfer portal will be nearly as big a deal as it currently is. There is no salary cap, which is one of the reasons why I'm trying so hard to raise money, because it is an arms race. The old arms race was, okay, who has the nicest locker room? Who has the nicest stadium? Who has the nicest athletic dorm? Do they have do they have their own personal bathrooms and stuff? All that stuff. Guess what? None of that stuff matters anymore. I'm just being honest. It doesn't. It just doesn't matter anymore.
When do we ever hear about facilities?
they don't matter anymore. The facilities do not. You ask any of those kids in Carver or in the football facility, how much, rank NIL versus the facility in terms of what you care most about. They're going to be like, we'll play at our old high school. We don't care, but pay us. They're going to want to make, and I'm not trying to make these people look like greedy people. They're just normal. They're normal kids. And they're not just normal. They're exceptional athletes and good students, and they're all really good kids. So the NIL piece is now where I'm hopeful that Hawkeye fans see the light, understand that this is the new normal, this is the new world, and that they'll donate to the Swarm to help us be competitive. You guys have seen the Kirk Ferentz video probably that was blasted. The Fran video is coming out in the next few days, saying very much the same, and then a Lisa Bluter video will be following that one. This is the new arms race. Will the rules change eventually? I'm sure that they will. I don't know when, and I don't know how, but this is how we can compete. And if we do not fund our NIL program, we will start to die. Fran would tell you it'll be a fast death. I don't know that it'll be super fast, but it will be painful.
Brad, Ben wants to tell you that Iowa fans are lucky to have your advocacy and initiative. Where would you rank Iowa currently in the NIL landscape? Top half of Power 5, top 20%? You have a thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly in the top half of Power 5. I would say we're in the top half of the Big Ten. Ohio State, would that surprise anybody that they're doing a pretty good job?
Why the slow reaction from Michigan? You have any idea why that's been somewhat of an issue?
Well, here's the thing. You got to have somebody that's not affiliated with the athletic department that just takes the initiative and says, I'm going to build this thing. Right. And I know it, and I'm going to figure out how to do it. And I'm going to put an infrastructure together. I'm going to spend some time on it, and I'm going to build this NIL collective. it's not something that athletics can actually do. They can't do it for them. The Michigan Athletic Department cannot do it for them. Some alumni out there, alumnus out there had to do it. And my gut reaction, I don't know the person. My gut reaction is that the person maybe didn't devote enough time, wasn't organized. Why do lots of businesses struggle? There's a variety of reasons, and I don't know what their reason is. My hunch is that once it becomes known that they're struggling, somebody in the Michigan universe is or will step up and make their collective great, just because they have more alumni than any other university in the country, or at least very few have more anyway. So you have to think that they're gonna build a pretty big war chest sooner or later. But as it stands, if you were asked Kade would tell you that we're off to a much better start.
Appreciate the super chat there from Ben. And then Doug, thank you for the super chat. He says, what is Brad's opinion on LSU gymnast Olivia? Is it pronounced Dunn?
Yeah.
Can it be hard if the athlete makes more than the coach and other problems? So I guess I'm not real familiar with the situation with Olivia Dunn. Maybe you are, Brad.
Well, I would tell you that I think Olivia Dunn is popular, maybe less so for her ability to get great numbers on the vault, and maybe more based on how she looks.
Sure.
And so, my opinion is that good for her. I don't have any problem with anybody making money. I'm all for it. And if a student athlete can make money, go get it. I'm all for it. The athlete making more than the coach, that's the free market, right?
Absolutely.
That's it. Who's going to be more beneficial to a company that needs somebody to market their goods or services? Is it going to be the gymnastics coach, or is it going to be the beautiful gymnast? That company apparently has decided that it's the gymnast, not the coach, and so that's why the gymnast makes more. I mean, that's will it happen? I mean, look at the NBA or any of the other. The players are the ones that make the most money on the professional stage.
I was about to say that. I last check, Luka Doncic makes more than Jason Kidd.
He does.
Last check.
Yeah. And so it's not that surprising. Can NIL cause a lot of problems? To Doug's point, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I'm proud of with our organization, is that in our collective, everybody has the ability to make the same. Just in the regular socialistic collective. Look at what Texas A&M did. Remember how Texas A&M, they paid reportedly. That's the other part about NIL. You never know exactly how much someone's getting. It's just reported, right? Reportedly, they spent $30-something million on a recruiting class, right? Okay, so they spend that kind of money on a recruiting class. What did Texas A&M? What was their record last year? 4-8, 5-7. I mean, they didn't go to a bowl game, and they've had a mass exodus of players. So if I was to guess, and I'm not in their locker room, but if I was to guess, there may be some toxicity that came along with NIL when it came to that organization. And so it's not NIL could be poisonous if you're not careful. If you're not doing it right. So.
Ben says, Corey, I got a big question. You're at a bar. You see an Iowa 4 and ISU 9. Which one are you making a move on? I'm going to say none, Ben, because I don't think my wife would appreciate that. And also, I don't go to bars. So I'm loyal to my wife, and I don't go to bars. So that's an easy way to – I know that's not the answer that Ben wanted, but that's the
I didn't – yeah. Yeah, this is completely. I'm a Hawkeye fan. I think, how could there possibly be an ISU 9? I don't know.
Yeah, it's true. You
That's
automatically
not even. This isn't even a real question.
get a 3-point deduction based on an Iowa State shirt.
Yeah.
Okay, so Hawkeye Bernie says that, do you know what goes on inside the program? I know that's kind of a vague question, but I guess maybe a better question to kind of piggyback off this is, how much do you stay in contact with Kirk Ferentz, with Brian Ferentz, with Phil Parker, and the people that matter on the inside?
I would say I talk to someone within Iowa football at least once a day.
And by text, by phone, all of the above.
Yeah. So, do I know everything that goes on inside? Absolutely not. Do I know a heck of a lot more than I ever once did when I was Joe fan? Yes. And let me give you a cool story. When I put the swarm together, I asked Kirk if I could talk to all the players. And he said, sure, what time? Set up a time. So this is in I guess probably beginning of August. They're in camp, right? So they're all miserable, hurting, hot, all those things. And they all went into the football facility, they have this big room inside the football facility that has enough seats for everybody on the team. Okay. And offense sits on one side and defense sits on the other. Kind of interesting dynamic. And so I go in there. There was not one single coach in there. So I got to talk to all the kids myself. Okay. So it was just me. I gave them a presentation, what I was trying to do, and got done, said, hey, anybody have any questions? Let it rip, whatever you want. And so there were probably a handful of questions. And I answered those questions. They said, anybody else? No. Okay. All right. Go Hawks. All right. So everybody gets up to leave. Wouldn't you know it? Every single player in that room, 125 of them, came up, shook my hand, and said, thank you. I thought that was pretty impressive, right? I mean, think about that. No, there are no coaches around. There's nobody that's telling them to do this. They got up individually, got in a line. Every one of them shook my hand and said, thank you. I walked away and I kind of man, that was pretty impressive. The Iowa football is doing something right with these kids. I'm not talking about, necessarily what they're doing on the field, but what they're doing off the field. I was really impressed by that.
And that's what you love about Kirk Ferentz and character. And let's go back to the Hayden Fry era, right? You grew up in the Hayden Fry era.
That's right.
So you appreciate both because both guys were so much different personality wise, and yet, and what they stand for on the football field. Both guys, you run first offense, but they're very different as far as coaches. But boy, character wise, those guys couldn't be more similar. Is that fair to say from your experience?
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. Both of them, I got to know both coaches. One, I was in school with Hayden. The other one, obviously, with Kirk. Both coaches have incredible memories. Really amazing.
Yeah.
Quick Hayden story you might enjoy. So Hayden was at the golf driving range lots of times he had this horrible slice. Just hit it just right to right. And I was practicing. I was on this team at the time, and he'd just sit and watch me hit balls, and he'd say, young man, I don't know, young man or son, I can't remember exactly what it was, but he was saying, I wish I could do anything to be able to hit it like that. And I said, well, let me watch a few. And so I made some tweaks, and he started hitting it better. And I saw his eyes get bigger. And, and he was really starting to get onto this. He loved it. And then he asked me what my name was, and I told him. I said, my name's Brad Heinrichs. I'm on the on the team. And he said, well, Brad, you've made my day. I want to get another bucket of balls now. I'm so excited. And then saw him one other time. Probably this would have been, so I graduated in 97. I would say it was probably about 10 years later. I'm on a flight to Vegas to go for March Madness. I go there every year with my buddies. I'm on the flight to Vegas, sitting in coach. Hayden is in first class. And I walk on the plane. He's already sitting there in first class. I walk in, I make eye contact with him, and he looks at me and says, "Brad, I still slice." And I'm just like, I can't even believe that you remember my name or recognize me or any of that. And he just, boom,
Yeah.
Wow, huh?
And Kirk is the same way.
Kirk's same way. Kirk remembers. He remembers just about anything and everything. It's really amazing. His memory is he's super sharp.
Yeah, and I mean, Hayden, from everything I've been told, he maintained that for the most part until the end.
Yeah,
it's just
I think so too. Yeah.
A couple questions here. So Doug wants to know how many members are in the swarm. What does it need to be up to? What's the goal?
We've got about 1,600 members, almost exactly at the moment. I think in order for us to be successful, we need Hawkeye Nation. We need it. We need as many people as we possibly can. I think at a minimum, we need 10,000 members at a minimum. You can't rely on just the big money donors to make this thing go. It's hard to ask a big money donor every year for however many thousands upon thousands of dollars. But if we get 15,000 Iowa fans to give $200 a year, it's $3 million. I think we need $10 million on an annual basis to really make this thing go. But if we're getting $3 or $4 million from Joe Iowa fan, then you've got corporations that will give to us. Then we've got some big money donors. We can be right where we can be super competitive. But it's going to take a metamorphosis in thought from the Iowa fans to understand what we're trying to do, understand we're trying to do it the right way, and then also understand that if we don't do this, what the consequences are going to be. That's what it's going to take. And it's also going to take the athletic department stepping up and endorsing us and asking Hawkeye fans to give to us. That's really difficult for them to do. But they're going to have to do that because, quite frankly, facilities aren't going to do it. It's just not. The student athletes don't care. They just don't.
I've got questions on top of questions here for you.
Go ahead.
Chat. Well, before we get to my questions, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. We'll get our ad in from our sponsor, Brad Heinrichs here of the Iowa Swarm, the Swarm Collective, I should say, taking your questions. Our call line is open, 515-635-1601, or you can drop a question in the chat. Back with Brad in just a moment, but first, a word from our sponsor. Welcome to Iowa Floor Covering, a locally owned flooring store in Bondurant, Iowa that specializes in do-it-yourself projects. If you're a contractor or a DIYer, Iowa Floor Covering has your back. Right now at Iowa Floor Covering, get tough core click together 4.5 millimeter waterproof vinyl flooring for $269 per foot when you install it yourself. That's a much better value than you'll find at any of the big box stores. Looking for other types of flooring? They can help with that too. Between their exceptional product knowledge and commitment to customer service, the guys at Iowa Floor Covering will provide everything you need to complete your DIY flooring project. So what are you waiting for? Skip the box stores now and visit iowafloorcovering.com/DIY. That's iowafloorcovering.com/DIY. Promotional pricing only available with self-installation. So appreciate Iowa Floor Covering as we are back here at Hawkeye Hangout from the Hawkeye of the Storm. And just a reminder to everybody, these types of shows, only possible by means of or by way of our sponsors. So be sure to support, in addition to supporting the Swarm Collective, support Iowa Floor Covering and Ascent Nutrition, both those companies sponsoring the show this evening. And even though we're out of season now for Iowa football, we don't have a regular scheduled show on Wednesday evenings. Hawkeye Hangout will be continuing throughout the year, and you have Iowa Floor Covering and Ascent Nutrition at least this month to thank for that. So again, check out those sponsors in our description. All right, back here with Brad Heinrichs, CEO of the Swarm Collective. And Brad, I have a question for you. You talked about the athletic department stepping up and really advocating for this collective and this initiative. What has been the gap? What has been the struggle? Has it been communication? Has it been values? Where has been the divide between why have there been some issues between the athletic department and the Swarm?
Well, so you can understand. Well, let me take a couple steps back. So, it got towards the end of the year, and quite frankly, when I say the end of the year, the end of the calendar year, which is also the end of the football season, and it became pretty clear to me that if we didn't get some of the players on the team NIL deals, that they may enter the transfer portal. And these NIL deals don't grow on trees. And so I'm looking at that, and then I talked to other leaders of collectives across the country. And for example, I talked to the leader of the North Carolina collective, and I said, how is it going? And he says, it's going great. North Carolina has a quarterback that was looking at leaving, and the athletic department gave the head of the collective the donor list, the season ticket holder list, and then also issued a statement saying, give to the NIL program. we call to arms. We need your help. And they were able to raise the money to keep the quarterback from leaving. And I see that, and then I see and then at that time, our athletic department hadn't issued a call to arms. In fact, they barely even recognized us, to be honest, in my opinion. They weren't doing enough from my perspective to help us. They weren't sending out emails to the season ticket holders, hey, donate to Swarm. They wouldn't give us any lists, which, that's their prerogative. I can live with that. But they weren't helping us as much as I would like. And so I called them out, and then Gary issued his letter, and good things have happened since then. And so I'm hopeful that we're now on the right track. But yeah, I think that there's some apprehension on their part. And I get it. I mean, they're trying to raise money for their budget, right? And to be honest, they're asking some of the same people that I'm asking, right? They're dipping into the same Hawkeye fans' wallets that I am. And so when they're trying to meet their budget, why should they be concerned about mine?
Here's my issue with that, Brad. Not to interrupt you, and we're
Go ahead.
caller in a second, but here's my issue with that from Iowa's perspective. You've got an unprecedented TV deal that's going to be producing an unprecedented dollar amount for your university here, within the next couple seasons. Are we really that stingy? Like, can you not? I mean, I'm not trying to rip on Gary Barta or the athletic department, but I have a problem with that argument, and I've heard that. You're not. This isn't the first time I've heard that narrative that, well, we're asking the same. Why would the university want to take away from their own dollars? Do they really? I mean, certainly the big donors. We acknowledge that those people are a big part of what I was doing. I think you'd agree with that, Brad. But I just can't imagine that it would have that big of an impact, given what you have coming in for dollar amounts, which is going to already put the Big Ten on a playing field that's ahead of basically every other conference as of right now, including the SEC. I do want to address the part of that letter that Gary Barta released. Was that back in December now?
Yep.
He had said that, and I quote this, access to the Hawkeye season ticket holder and contributor databases are never released directly to a third party. He was also interviewed prior to the Citrus Bowl, and I don't have that quote, and that's my fault for not having it. But you can find it, look it up, and listen to it later. But I'll paraphrase what he said. He basically said that he's not aware of any universities that release that private information to in a collective. That is in direct contrast to what you just said about North Carolina. So someone's not telling the truth there, or Gary's not aware of North Carolina. Are you telling me North Carolina is the only program that does that?
I'm not going to call Gary a liar. I think.
Well, you don't have to.
He probably just didn't ask the same ones I talked to. I'm going to give him that benefit.
So you didn't. I'm going to challenge you. Didn't bring North Carolina up to Gary.
I've brought it up, not to Gary. I don't have access to Gary as much as you might think. I talked to some of the people who work for Gary, that I have brought that up. So it may not have been relayed to Gary.
Okay, so let me. Here's a follow up then. Are you? I don't know how in touch you are with these other. You brought up North Carolina, but these other collective leaders, are there other athletic directors who are more transparent? Or I shouldn't even. That's an unfair question. Let's rephrase that question. Do you feel that you have enough direct contact with Gary Barta, or do you feel like, given what other collective leaders have, there could be more direct contact between you and the athletic director, or is that even important to you?
It's not as important to me that I get to talk to Gary Barta. He's a nice guy, but it's not like that's a big thrill for me. What I want, and they know this, what I want is for his office to be constantly looking at ways in which they can petition the Hawkeye fans to help support us. And when I ask for things and they answer is no, I can actually live with no. But what I want is, okay, I can live with no, but then come to me with a solution that is a yes, right? I know what you want. I can't give you this, but here's what I can do. I can live with that, right? And so I've been challenging them over the last 3 weeks, and they're trying. I'm not here to rip on them at this point. You know, they have responded to my grievances, and they're trying to work to help us more. But if you think about what I said before, is that we need at least 10,000 to 15,000 Hawkeye fans to contribute to us, and we only have 1,600. I have to think that the masses of Hawkeye fans out there don't know much about us. They don't know. I can't think that all of the Hawkeye fans out there know about us and then have decided, no, I don't want to give to them. If that's the case, then I'll be very disappointed. That's really bad news. I'm actually of the opinion that a lot of Hawkeye fans don't know, don't understand, have no idea what we're all about, what this whole thing is all about. And there's an educational element that needs an educational hurdle that we need to cross before we can get to yes to some of these people. And at Iowa Athletics can help us with the access and the education to get to yes. The NIL rules say that they can help us fundraise. They can help us do things. So they have a foundation. They've got a legion of fundraisers out there. Those fundraisers can help fundraise for us. It doesn't have to just be on our own. And those are the things that I'm challenging them on.
So is there, yes or no, is there a rule or a law that you're aware of that prohibits Iowa from releasing that personal information?
No, that's their own policy. That's their privacy policy.
Okay.
Has Iowa done it before? Yes, they have. The reason I know this is because there's this is before Gary Barta. So to be fair, I think
Sure.
Before Gary Barta, I know that they had done that on a couple of occasions. But policies change and evolve, and so this may be a policy that they've had for a while that they strictly adhere to, and I can appreciate that. I don't really have to have the list. I don't have to have the list.
Sure.
But if I give you an email, I want you to send it to the list. Right. I give it. Here's what I'm trying to accomplish. Will you please send it to the list? I don't have to have their their information. I want them to help us.
For me, it's a reflection of eagerness to help and how on board are you. I think it's a reflection of all of that. And that's why I challenged you on, not challenged you, but I'm challenging Gary because, and that's why I asked you, are there other ADs across the country who are more in touch with collectively? Yeah. I'm not asking you that because I think you would get a thrill from talking to Gary, but just because I think that would indicate, in my opinion, I'm not speaking for you, Brad, but in my opinion, that's what I do here on the show, give opinions. In my opinion, that is, if Gary Barta spends regular time, doesn't have to be every day, every week, but regular time in direct contact with someone like Brad Heinrichs, who's the head of the Swarm, it would be an indication to me as a fan that, hey, he cares. This is a priority. So when I hear that you don't have much contact with the AD, direct contact, and it's people in his office, that kind of just gives me an odd feeling. Doesn't make me real warm and fuzzy. But that's just my opinion. This is just
it's fair. And honestly, it's disappointing to me too from that standpoint. I talked to Fran a lot. I talked to Kirk a lot. They were at my press conference. Gary wasn't at the press conference.
Yeah.
Our coaches, let's put it this way, our coaches completely understand how important this is. They will be the first to tell you how important this is. And, during the season, you want me to do a video? I'll do a video. Whatever you need me to do, Brad, they're in. Because they know that without the NIL, they won't have good players. And coaches hate to try to compete without good players.
The Real Hayden, thank you for the super chat. He says, thanks, Brad, for all your... he's talking to you, not me. Thanks for all your hard work, Brad. I still don't think most fans understand how important the Swarm is to keeping UI competitive. Very grateful. Again, thank you.
Nice. Those are kind words. And, one other thing I will say, because I've read some of the comments, and it's the comments like, and I'll just go ahead and I'm not calling anybody out, but I've seen several, and it's not just here. I've seen it elsewhere. I will give to Swarm once Brian's gone. I'll give to Swarm if we get rid of Brian, or I'll give when Kirk finally leaves, or give whatever, and to me, those are like mutually exclusive events. I don't control, I don't control who the coaches are. I help with players. I don't help with coaches, for or against. And I would hope that no matter who the coaches are, the Hawkeye Nation will want to help the players, and in turn also help the Eastern Iowa community with a tax-deductible donation. And regardless of who the coaches are, without players, we don't stand a chance. We've won quite a few games. Actually, we've won more games with Brian Ferentz as offensive coordinator than any other offensive coordinator under Kirk Ferentz's tenure. Like it or not, it's the truth. Do I think it's because of Brian Ferentz? Not saying that. I'm just saying, just listing a fact. And while I'm kind of on a roll here, before we get to more stuff, I've got a fun. I'm a math guy. I'm an actuary, right? I've got a magic number for you, okay, as it pertains to Hawkeye football. The magic number is 24. Any idea where I'm going with this? In the last 4 years, we are 25-0 when we have scored 24 or more points in the game. In the last 8 years, we are 55-3 in games where we have scored 24 or more points.
Yeah.
That's wild. And during that time, the average number of points scored by a Division I opponent, Division I team, is somewhere in the 26 range. Is kind of the average-ish.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's really amazing that if we could score 24 points every single game, we would be on the top of the mountain.
That's what. So what you just said, and I know you're not advocating for anything.
I'm just delivering news. I'm not.
I have said this a million times. I'll say it again. If you could just be average to even slightly below average, and the numbers you just gave me, which are just one stat. That's
one stat.
Your stat to bring up, Brad. But what you just said kind of supports the narrative out there, Brad, in a way, because you don't even have to be average. But if you can be with what Phil Parker has done with this defense, what LeVar Woods has done with the special teams units over the years, we're talking about potential elite status in college football. But I understand you're not. I'm kind of taking what you're saying and putting my own narrative behind it.
I understand.
I think a lot of fans feel the same way.
Yeah. The other way of thinking about it too, though, is, we just might have the best quarterback that we've had here since Brad Banks.
Sure. Yeah.
Certainly the most decorated.
Fair point. Yeah.
And suddenly and we're probably going to add another couple, 2-3 people out of the portal, I bet, by the time it's all said and done.
Now we're in this. Now or after spring ball.
Maybe one before one, and then the others probably after, would be my guess. Okay. And if we are able to do that, add those pieces, man, it's not out of the question that we get to that sort of consistently above 24 point kind of number. And then, hey, Kade bar the door, we might be playing for championships here. And that's the hope from my perspective.
Absolutely. Let's get to our next caller who's been on hold. Thank you for calling Hawkeye Hangout here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Lomansky, Corey, good evening.
Hey, Lomansky, how are you, sir?
Good. Brad, part of the reason that I donate from the Hawkeye of the Storm is what information enthusiasm that Corey sends out. I call it marketing wise. I can't speak for Corey, but it markets that Iowa program. You're doing the same thing. Thank you very much. My interactions at Iowa, the class of 85, when, guys like on the football team, won't go down the names, but you know what era that is from the class of 85.
Yeah, you had a pretty good win there in 1985. Yeah.
Every interaction I ever had with an Iowan athlete was tremendous. It really was. And, Norm, I dated a gal that Norm Granger dated after he dated her, and I ran into him just like by luck. And so Norm walks up to me and he goes, how's my girl? And Norm Granger played for the Cowboys. He's an impressive human specimen. And he was the nicest guy, wish you luck with her. She's a good gal, da-da-da. It's just one example of the class of the Iowa athlete that they brought in over the years.
Yep.
And Brad, I'd like you to comment, your comment about education, you hit the nail on the head. I'm an alumnus. I've had football tickets. I haven't heard anything, but I follow the Hawks pretty hard, and I've been trying to make that decision to donate to help the program. Talk about. We're a little bit, I don't want to say disadvantages, but we have to meet the challenge. We always have, and there's different state rules throughout the country. Can you comment about the different state rules, and maybe there's a collective in the Big Ten that's running, it's the Wild Wild West, and it's a kind of a call to arms. If we got somebody that's probably doesn't have the conservatism of the average Iowan, can you comment on that?
Yeah, to some extent, yeah. And one of the reasons that my friends say that I went nuclear. One of the reasons I went nuclear, so to speak, on the athletic department was I was seeing emails being sent by the Michigan athletic director telling all of their season ticket holders and donors to donate to NIL. And then I saw the same thing at Ohio State, where Gene Smith, one of the most probably well-known athletic directors in the country, is encouraging the Ohio State Buckeye Nation to contribute to their NIL programs. This is why it's important. This is where we need money here. Give money, please. And that wasn't happening at Iowa, and so that's why I got frustrated and said, "Come on, guys! These guys are Michigan and Ohio State are tough as hell to beat anyway. We don't need to give them more of an advantage here." And so as far as different states go, there's different states have addressed it differently. As it pertains to college athletics, it's and some of the states will allow high school kids to benefit by NIL and others won't. One of the interesting states I've found is Utah, where you can actually the student athletes can actually be an employee of, I think that they can actually be an employee of the athletic department, and they can be paid as employees. Now that's an interesting one, right? And quite frankly, that may be where we all end up at some point. It may be that NIL becomes essentially like professional basketball team, where Fran gets a bunch of money from the athletic department as his salary. Maybe it's a salary cap deal. Hey, Fran, you got this amount of money, and you got to get your team, and you can pay your player, whoever you want to pay, whatever. That's his roster. He's got to pay, he's got so many dollars to pay for his roster. That could be where we end up. Different rules in different states, which makes it weird. But in the Big Ten, I think it's all fairly, from the standpoint of a level playing field, it's fairly level, or as level as it is, now with the regular sports. It's always slanted towards Ohio State and Michigan, it feels like. But their rules aren't any more advantageous to them than the rules in Iowa.
Anything else, Lemansky?
Well, I'm just wondering, Brad, if it would seem to me that when we had season tickets, my family had season tickets to basketball and football, and my dad asked if his extra donation, and it's quite a bit of money nowadays to get good seats. It just is. That's how they fund everything. It's extra donation plus you price your tickets. He wrote specific examples of where he wanted his money to go.
Yeah.
And with all these relationships with different things, I don't know why in the world that Iowa wouldn't get on the marketing part of it without a big show and give you a billboard in Des Moines, give you some kind of, I was a finance marketing major. There's so many ways they could help you out without Gary Barta getting in front of a microphone and say, I 120% back the swarm. Let me gotta be way, I feel for you because I've raised money for organizations in the state of Iowa, and I was just a banker. Don't you think there's ways they can help you without being so, to me, when Saban goes after Texas A&M, boy, that's the proof of the Wild Wild West right there. Those guys, as don't you think?
Oh yeah. No. Let me give you guys some more insight. You guys might find this interesting. So, you may have noticed at Kinnick at the last 3 or 4 games, our swarm, like this thing on this logo at Kinnick is up on the big board, advertised. Was that a gift from Iowa Athletics? No. Did we pay for it? Yes. So we had to, in order to, and then the advertisements on the post-game show where we had a, give to the swarm kind of thing. You may have heard that when you're driving away from the game. Were those given to us? No. Did we have to pay for them? Yes.
I want to make perfectly clear. Could the university, is it within their rules for them to give you free advertising to put that out on Learfield? Is that within the rule book? Can they do that if they choose?
They can. What's interesting, I've learned, this is something I had no idea about until 6 months ago, 5 months ago, is that Learfield has a real stranglehold over everything that happens with Iowa football and basketball.
Yeah.
Learfield is athletics has to clear it with Learfield. It almost feels like. And so we had to become a partner with Learfield in order to be able to advertise at Hall. And becoming a partner does not mean you just go in there and shake hands and say, hey, we're buddies now. Becoming a partner means, I write a check. Okay. And so we wrote a check to become partners with Learfield, which then allowed us the opportunity to advertise in Kinnick, our logo, and advertise on the post-game show. And by the way, the Kirk video, the Fran video, and the Lisa video, that's part of our partnership with Learfield that we paid for. Okay. So when you see me complaining on Twitter and elsewhere, it's hard for me. It's hard for me to not want to scream when I hear, oh, we're helping the swarm out by doing all these things, when I'm sitting there going, you're helping because I paid you to help.
Would the university argue that you did not pay directly for these things, and these are, when the payment is made to Learfield, is it stipulated that you're getting this, and this? Is that how it works then? Okay.
Yes. Those videos are in our contract.
Okay. I don't have
again, it's just the nature of the beast. But I think it's interesting. And
well, I think it's sad. I don't think it's interesting, Brad. I think it's sad. That's my opinion.
It's a tough one. It's tough. It's not what I expected, but it's just it's the world that I've got to deal with. So,
Lemansky, is there anything else? Any parting comment or shot or whatever?
Yeah, I'll get off of here, and out of respect to the other Hawkeyes that need to interact with Brad. Corey, thanks for bringing Brad on. I got two things that fascinates me. I call the athletic ticket office, Brad, and this is for humor when you're frustrated. They've got the family history that we've had basketball and football tickets, and I tried to get it into somebody important. I got a really nice lady after on hold for, a lot longer than Corey puts me on hold by far. That's a thank you to you, Corey. And what's interesting is the investment person that my family uses went to a practice when Hayden was here. And I talked to Hayden when he first came here, when he was outside the Memorial Union trying to get people to come to games. And I got access. He wanted to know where I was from. He wanted to know my major. He wanted, did you come here to have fun at Iowa? I still have my field house glasses. Brad will know that hangout. But anyway, So I had access. I've had communication with Fran McCaffrey. I got access. He respects me. This investment guy that was at Kinnick in front of Hayden, he was a Marine. He was in a big lineup of a PR deal, and he was the last guy in line on purpose because he talks as much as I do. He gets to my friend Paul, shakes his hand, walks away 10 feet. Paul's walking away. Hayden turns around, goes, "Hey, sir, what's that pin?" "Paul, what's that pin?" Paul turns around. Paul says to Hayden, "That's a Marine pin." Hayden says, "Young man," and Paul wasn't young, "I'm going to give you a tour of practice today. Follow me. The Marines stick together." So, Brad, thank you for your Hawkeye loyalty. I wish you the best.
Thank you.
I'll be following you and trying to give you some help, but keep that statistic about how many people need to follow you to make this successful. Because I've raised money for an Iowa cause and didn't get paid. So you're my kind of guy. Go Hawks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody out there that wants to help us, iowaswarm.com. Pretty easy does it.
Yep. And
really I just appreciate it.
I just threw that up in the chat, the live chat, so everybody's got that to join, and I appreciate here a couple of comments. Hawkman 2111 says, "I'll give to the Swarm tonight." So we'll
made it worth it. It's absolutely worth my while now for sure.
Absolutely. Let's get to our next caller here. And again, I've got some other questions. We're trying to wrap this up. Brad, you said you'd Be willing to give us 2 hours? We're in the
No,
final.
we're good.
Hour,
Whatever you want to quit, I'm ready to go.
Okay.
I actually just poured myself a beer. I feel like it's 10:30 my time. I feel like I deserve a beer at this point.
I figured it was coffee to keep you awake, but if it's a beer,
No. This is a beer. I'm a happy guy.
Okay, let's get to our next caller here at from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Thank you for calling Hawkeye Hangout. Who's on the line? All right. You know, the trolls are easier to identify. You're going to get like 0.5 seconds of fame, and then we're going to move on. Okay, question in the chat here from John. He says, Brad, where do you stay during March Madness?
I usually stay at the Bellagio.
Do you really?
Yeah. They've got a great sports book there. And since I've been going since I was 21, which makes it, this will be the 1 year we missed due to COVID, right? But
right.
Other than that, this will be year 27 in a row that I've gone. I'm nuts. Maybe I'm just a creature of habit.
Let's get to our next caller. Thank you for calling Hawkeye Hangout here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Hey, I have a question for Brad.
Okay.
Hey, Brad, you want to?
All right. He tried it again. Boy, opening all these different phone numbers to try it, and it's pretty sad. Okay. Let's see.
Do you want me to hit some of these ones in the chat? I mean, I don't care.
Yeah, go ahead, Brad. And I can. I got a couple of them here. Let me throw up a couple on the screen so we can.
Go ahead.
Do this in somewhat of an organized fashion. Hawkeye, Corvette, Long Guy. What percentages go to each program?
Yeah, so if you, it's a good question. So the answer is that when you donate to iosforum.com, you're donating to the collective. It's a tax deductible donation. Every student athlete in football and basketball then gets the same opportunity, which means that about 80% of your donation, let's say you give $100, $80 of those 100 of that 100 would probably go to football players. 10 of it would go to men's basketball, and 10 would go to women's basketball. Why? Because there's a lot more football players than basketball, just by the nature of the numbers. It's not because I like football, 4 times better than basketball. No, it's or whatever. It's more about just every student athlete gets the same opportunity. So, but here's the other thing I will say: if you give $1,000 or more, you can say it all goes to women's basketball, or it all goes to men's basketball, it all goes to you can tell me to do with it what you want if you give $1,000 or more. But if you're giving $20 a month, I'm gonna split it up 80-10-10.
The Organic Veil Radio says, "Hey Brad, we've got a bunch of Hawkeye fans down here in Tampa. Need to get you all connected."
The Northerners.
The Northerners. It's weird having you call Tampa North, but anyways,
that's right. Cold up there.
Yeah, sure it is. Brian says, "Thank you for the super chat, Brian." He says, "Can you say if there are any other possible signings from the portal in the works, and how is the season ticket swarm issue going?" Okay. I think we already addressed that question.
Kind of addressed it. What I didn't say was another thing that I got shot down on. What I really wanted was whenever they sent out the season ticket holder renewal thing, that they put a box in there that says join Swarm for however much. You know what I mean? I was hoping to get some kind of tag along. No such luck. Anyway, can you say if there are any other possible signings from the portal in the works? Yes. There's a kid named Rusty Feth that is visiting this weekend along with Nick Jackson. Rusty Feth is an interior offensive lineman from, I think, Miami of Ohio.
It was coached by George Barnett for
a year. So there's a connection there. And he started, like, I think 3 years maybe. He's played a lot of downs in Division I football. Pretty good player. And would certainly add depth. If not, he may even start on the interior of the line. Also, a kid named Nick Jackson out of Virginia is a 3-time All-ACC linebacker. This kid's a baller. He's really good and really nice kid too. Smart kid. He's graduating. He's staying in Virginia for the rest of this semester. He wants to graduate at Virginia with his business degree. And I think he's choosing between us, Oklahoma, LSU, and Auburn. And so we're fishing in deep water with Nick Jackson. But, we did have the Butkus Award winner here last year. So it wouldn't be unheard of that a good linebacker came through the University of Iowa. So, and I think that the coaching staff recruited Nick out of high school. So they started a relationship with him way back when. So it's not as if they're making introductions at this point. So those two are a possibility. There'll be other people that come up. I'm told all the time it's a marathon, not a sprint. So do I expect that there'll be another 3 or 4 guys that we add to the roster between now and fall camp? I think we will. Is it for sure? No, but if the right kids come along and we strike an accord, I think that'll happen.
How big of a factor was, or maybe you can't say this, but how big of a factor was NIL with Walter Rouse and his decision? He had Iowa in the top 3, and then Isaac Tisla, who ended up at Arkansas, who had Iowa in his top 3 or 4.
Tisla, I don't think was a big factor at all. I don't think it was. Okay. Rouse, yeah. His agents made that pretty clear.
Okay.
I mean, you don't have to follow this too closely to know when a kid he commits to one school and then 2 days later commits to another one. Like decommits and commit. What happened in 2 days? Right? I'm all in on this team, and then 2 days later, oh no, I'm all in on this team. Oh, okay, sure.
All right, we're going to keep trying with the phone line, but we'll just stick where the trolls if they're there. Thank you for calling Hawkeye Hangout. Who's on the line?
Hey guys, this is Chuck. How you doing?
Hey Chuck.
Oh, Chuck just got disconnected. We'll try again. Phone line's open, 515-635-1601. 515-635-1601. Sorry about that, Chuck. Again, the line is open. Steve wants to know, can Kirk donate? What are the rules on coaches giving to this form privately?
They made that very clear that coaches cannot donate to collectives. And now I joke with Mary. I'm like, well, you're not a coach, Mary. I mean, you can write me a check, right? I think that would be great. That's blurring the lines. And probably the answer is no, she can't either. But that's a rule, and frankly, I can understand it, because where I think some of our good friends in the South were already considering, which was increasing the contracts of the coaches and having the coaches contribute to the NIL, because the athletic departments can't directly do it. That's the other way of doing it, right? Hey, I'll pay you an extra $2 million. I want you to give $2 million to the NIL. Got it? Okay, got it. Right. So
not feasible.
No, you can't do it. Can't do it.
Carl wants to know, how much money will it take on an annual basis to be competitive in the Big Ten and on a national level? I think you said that earlier, right? Your goal is
$10 million a year.
$10 million a year.
Yeah.
And where are we now? Right. I mean, with what we have,
we're in 6 months, we're about 3.25.
So, but you've built businesses, you understand how this works. So,
yeah.
Do you see trajectory to where you'll get to 10 million?
I like to, the big unknown for me is knowing what I don't know is how much of Hawkeye Nation knows about us and has made a definitive decision not to donate. Right. That's what I don't know. If you told me that everybody in Hawkeye Nation knows about us and has made a decision, either yes or no, then I would be really disappointed, because I know we're pretty much stuck on 1,600, right? So I'm banking on a lot of people still don't know. A lot of people don't they haven't made up their mind yet, or they're still trying to learn about it. A lot of times in sales, you got to tap someone on the shoulder 7 or 8 times before they finally buy. So, yeah, I think we'll get there. And by the way, when I say 10 million, it's not as if I think a lot of our competition's at 10 million now. I think they're running the same race we are. They're not, they're kind of in the same zone. A lot of them are. I saw a question on the chat as I was scrolling through there. Someone was asking about Northwestern. Northwestern just started an NIL program literally weeks ago. There it is. I don't have a lot of intel on Wisconsin.
I know Erica asked this question. She's from Chicago, I believe. So
okay, yeah. Northwestern just started their collective. I mean, Wisconsin is clearly, they've got a collective, and they're probably farther along from an athletic department standpoint. Some of these athletic departments are actually appointing NIL people. Like they're paying like paid positions in the athletic department to help with NIL. Iowa does not have that, unfortunately. But Northwestern, I mean, they can't be too far along. They just started. Wisconsin, don't know a lot about them, but at least
new coaching staff, young guy, and they've done very well in the portal. So
yeah, that and it's hard to do well in the portal without a good NIL program. I'm just going to be honest. I mean, look what we've done this year versus what they did last year. So I think that we've definitely made a positive impact so far. I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of it. And all of you out there that support us, be proud of it as well, because without you, we would have nothing.
Appreciate the super chat from Erica. Let's get to our caller on hold. Thank you for calling Hawkeye Hangout. Who's on the line?
This is John, Corey and Brad. How are you?
Good, John. How are you?
Good. Brad, I seen where a Miami player had been promised $14 million in the NIL, and he wasn't happy because he wasn't getting it. Are you seeing or hearing much of that where players are promised and then not delivered?
Well, that's a problem, and I think that may have happened in Texas A&M too. One of the things that I'm doing with our program is, I'm signing. The kid signs a contract with us, and the corporation signs a binding contract with us. And so, if the corporation decides that they want to renege on the contract, then we can go after them legally. I think other places it's a little bit more fast and loose. Oh, hey, yeah, I'll give them a couple $100,000. Just get them on campus. Well, I'll take care of them. Then they get on campus. Nah, I don't have it. I thought I had it, but I don't. Sorry. Well, then now they're like, well, wait, where's my $200,000? I mean, that happens. And then you got a bad situation. I think in this case, and I don't have all the specifics. I think it was Florida, I thought, where the kid was going to go there, got an NIL deal, and then he was going to transfer, and it becomes a mess. So the contracts are, there's not the one thing you can't put in the contract, it can't be performance based. I couldn't in a Kade McNamara contract say, well, you're going to get this much if you throw this many touchdowns and this much if you throw that many touchdowns. You can't do that. But at the same time, what you can do though is to say, well, if you're not here, then the contract becomes null and void. But it's got to be in the contract, right? If you don't put that in the contract, then he could say, if Kade McNamara got a deal, I shouldn't even just use his name. If any player got a deal, NIL deal, and it says you're going to get X, and it doesn't say you have to be enrolled at the University of Iowa, then he could literally go to Iowa State and have a legal right to getting X. That would piss me off.
Yeah.
He's playing for Iowa State and we're paying him. Okay. So we got to make sure our contracts are strong. And there's probably a contractual issue with a lot of stuff. The other thing I will say, I keep saying that. is that all of this stuff you read, you don't know whether it's true or not, because you don't have to report. This guy that says he's getting $7 million, right? But you don't know if that's really true. You don't know. It could be just a big lie. He could be getting 70,000 or 7,000, and he just says it's 7 million. This isn't like something that has to be reported. This isn't like, I'll use this just to get people riled up. This isn't like Brian Ferentz's salary. It's not public record.
These are private.
These are private deals. This is not a public record thing. And so you don't. That's one of the weird things for me too. Is what is the market? You don't know, and the people you rely on for the market don't have an incentive to tell you the truth. So.
And that's what Steve says. This why isn't the exact dollar amount offered to an athlete disclosed publicly? Funding fans deserve to know this. Well, I understand when you're saying those who are funding. You could argue that to an extent, Brad, but you could also counter argue it, right? I mean, part of what you just said.
Well, if you think about it from the way our organization is structured, I don't mind saying how much each kid gets out of the Swarm Collective, and that number, I'm hopeful that next year that number is going to be about $20,000 a kid. That's the goal
per year.
Per year. We're not talking; these kids aren't, that doesn't pay for a Mercedes, okay? And they're going to have to do charity work to get it. That's the goal. It's not what they're getting this year, but that's the goal for next year. Now having said that, so your big high profile guys, those are private deals between the kid and the kid in the Swarm and the corporation. And so that stuff I can't disclose. But think of it this way: the masses probably aren't funding that deal. The masses are funding the collective deal. Hy-Vee or pick your corporation is funding the deal for the star quarterback or the basketball player or whoever, right? And that's a private deal. So
right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, great answer to the question. John, do you have anything else for us?
Just real quick, I was looking at the website. Certain basketball games at Carver, if you had a ticket and you were a member of the Swarm, you could get in for food and drinks, I think it was, before the game. Is there a certain level of participation that is required before you can get in there? I mean, can you get in there for $20 a month, or does it have to be $100 a month? Or
no, I think the answer is that if you're a member, you can get in. I think that as long as there's space, as long as there's room. I think that if you're on the higher level, you're guaranteed a spot. But if you're, I think that if you're just a member, I think you can get in. And if you ever want to get in and someone stops you, you just tell them that you're a friend of Brad Heinrichs and he sent you there. And then you're going to get in. How about that?
There you go, John.
Okay. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank
Thank
you, sir.
you.
All right. Carl wants to know, how many season ticket holders are there? Do you know the most recent numbers?
I think the number is somewhere between, I think it's like 11,000 or so, which sounds low, right? But if you think of it from the standpoint of each season ticket holder might have 3 or 4 tickets, then it doesn't sound so bad, right? So in terms of each season, I think it's in the 10 to 12,000 range. I thought it was like 10 or 11,000, somewhere in there.
Okay, so here's a fair question from Akriel. Could more advertising outside of social media possibly boost donations to the collective? What's the approach to advertising outside of what has been done with Learfield, which I saw a comment too about Learfield, and yes, Learfield is more interested in lining their pockets. Well, of course they are. They're a private corporation, private business.
For profit.
Exactly. So, but advertising outside of the realm of the university, how much has that been explored?
Quite a bit. I've looked into there's things called like, and this is dating me and showing how technologically horrible I am. You saw me trying to get into this chat and I couldn't even do it. But it's true. There's this thing called like geofencing or something where what we did is like, this is kind of cool. Like like on Saturdays, football Saturdays, you can pay Google, of course, to essentially anybody within a mile radius of Kinnick Stadium, that if they open up their social media, it'll put a Swarm advertisement. So we did that and paid them for that. We didn't get very many new members, so I don't. That obviously didn't work. Or maybe it did, and we just didn't get direct. Just it didn't resonate directly into new members. Could have happened later, right?
You know this from building businesses that advertising in general is a marathon, not a sprint.
It's hard. It's hard, and it's hard to determine the ROI on any particular thing. I did also look into, your newspaper stuff and their online stuff. That's really bloody expensive. My gosh. And I just couldn't justify it. Maybe it's worth it. I don't know. If someone has an opinion, let me know. But I didn't go that route. I just felt like that was throwing money away. Going on these podcasts, advertising on social media, being front and center, sending out Kirk videos and Fran videos, letting them be an ambassador for us. I feel like that's the best way of advertising. But if someone else has a better idea, I'm all ears. I'm not a marketing genius.
And it's the most cost effective, right? I mean, if you're
able it is.
So and I did see a question from Jesse. I think we answered this, but he wants to know, is there an exception for other sports, other athletes like Spencer Lee? I mean, Spencer Lee can go out, any of these athletes, they can say, well, to heck with you, Brad, I'm going to go sign a deal with whatever company and do that.
Yeah,
that's their freedom.
They can. And wrestling kind of has the Hawkeye Wrestling Club, which is their own NIL kind of program, if you will. But if we had another student athlete in another sport, let's say it's a woman's rower who ends up, she's in the Olympics, or she's, whoever, right? And she has some NIL appeal. We'd be happy to, through the Swarm Inc. side, hook her up with corporations or whatever. If we thought that she was marketable in that way, we would be happy to help her. But in general, it's that Olivia Dunn is obviously an anomaly there at LSU. I think she is. But it's usually the most marketable athletes are in the revenue producing sports, usually. And so those three are the ones that we tend to help. Obviously, wrestling may be an exception, being a revenue producing sport in Iowa. But they have the Hawkeye Wrestling Club, and we don't want to step on their toes. But we would be happy to help them if Spencer says, "Hey, Brad, will you have your attorneys there look at this contract?" And I'm like, "Sure, of course. They're Hawks. I'm going to help any Hawk out I can."
Absolutely. We got Brad Heinrichs here, CEO of the Swarm Collective. That's Iowa's primary NIL initiative, I guess is the best way to explain it quickly. Final segment with Brad coming up. We're going to take a quick 60-second break. When we come back, final segment here from the Hawkeye of the Storm Hawkeye Hangout on a Wednesday. Appreciate all the interaction. I know, Brad, I appreciate you being here, and I know you're happy that you're able to get the word out here. So keep the questions coming. We'll try to kind of go quick fire on some of these coming up after the break. So we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back more with Brad Heinrichs of the Swarm Collective. Hawkeye fans, let's talk about health and performance optimization for a moment. Our sponsor, Ascent Nutrition, offers amazing products. It's actually owned by former Iowa graduate Lance Shuttler. Now, I've decided to partner with Ascent Nutrition because of their unique approach to human health. Ascent offers an organically grown, mold and mycotoxin-free coffee. It provides a pure, clean, and rich flavor without those pesticides that most coffees are treated with. They also offer an algae oil DHA, which is used to support brain health, memory, and focus, as well as proper nervous system development in adults, children, athletes, and even pets. Now, lastly, their unique crafted wild pine pollen is used to support cardiovascular health, hormonal function, and a healthy libido. Your purchase not only supports this channel, but the business of a former Hawkeye. Visit goascentnutrition.com or click the link in the description below and use the code Hawkeyes. That's the code Hawkeyes to receive 15% off your total order from Ascent Nutrition. All right, appreciate Ascent Nutrition. And as I've said before, I talked about Iowa floor covering earlier, but Lance Shuttler with Ascent Nutrition. If you're enjoying, I've certainly a lot of really good comments here this evening. You're enjoying the content as always. Thank you for that, those kind remarks. But the biggest way you can thank us and thank the people who are supporting us is by supporting those people. That means browsing their stores. Certainly, Iowa floor covering. If you got a project you're taking under, and especially in Iowa and the Midwest, you want to support local, do so with IFC down in Bondurant, and certainly Ascent Nutrition and former Iowa graduate and Lance Shuttler. Great products. Got some of their pine pollen powder next to me right here. So certainly check it out. Great health products. And again, available at goascentnutrition.com. We've got a lot of questions that I've missed. We're going to try to go somewhat quick fire here because I don't want to keep you here all night, Brad.
Whatever. I'm here. I'm whatever you guys want. I'm all.
D. Rollison says, wrestling isn't a major sport in Iowa City. Can you expound on wrestling NIL? I think we kind of touched on that. You talked about it's not obviously involved directly with the Swarm, but you have the Hawkeye Wrestling Club. Yeah. And then I saw the most recent question here from where is the question? Somebody made a comment about UFC. Do you know anything about the connection with UFC sponsoring the wrestling team? Do they get NIL off of that? Again, I know this is kind of out of your realm to an extent. Can you comment on wrestling at all further?
I can't speak to that. I don't have all the details. I've heard this, but I don't have any of the details there, so I'm not much help.
Okay. Good question here from BMF 395. Are NIL packages committed to Procter Van Ness now easy to distribute to other players, or are the companies reluctant to give to others? Well, Van Ness and Procter in the same boat as far as how that went down, but I understand the question.
Yeah, I think the question is if those guys had deals and they left to go somewhere else, does that free up money to give to some other player? And I think the answer to that is partially. There's going to be someone is going to be more apt to want to. Yeah, how should I say this? There's some appeal, right, to a couple of the players that you're mentioning there, and if I went to them and said, "Hey, you know what? I'd like to get something for our backup safety," they're going to say, "No, thanks." I'll keep my money. That person isn't going to help us at all. Right. That isn't going to help market for us. And there's something that some of these local businesses like about an Iowa kid that's very marketable. Cooper DeJean is going to become. He's already marketable. He's going to be incredibly marketable. He reminds me of Tim Dwight back from my days. I mean, he's just got it, and so I think it's not easy is really maybe the answer to the question. It's not necessarily easy. It sounds like it's easy, but it's really not, because the people that are, or the companies that are offering these deals are offering the deal for a specific player because of a specific reason. And it may have to do with both their marketability as a player, but also their personality. If they're going to do a commercial or something for them, you can't. You give it to somebody who's sort of not very dynamic, may not be worth as much to them.
Jennifer says, any idea how much Alabama handed to Caden Proctor? Can you dispel, or not dispel, but can you comment on the narrative out there that because I can just tell you, if you ask Caden's camp, okay,
Yeah.
because I relayed that information on this very show. Caden's camp kept telling me, and I'm sure telling a lot of people, that this was in no way, nothing about this was about money whatsoever. You're probably going to give me a different perspective. Can you talk specifically on the Caden Proctor loss?
I was disappointed. Like
You and a lot of people.
Yeah, I was very disappointed, and I was one. This will help the Brian haters out there. Up until the very end, I was telling people he's coming, guys. He's coming. He's taking these trips just for grins. He's trying. He's enjoying being an 18-year-old highly coveted player, and he's just having fun. You know, I was with his agent when at the what game was that? Was that the Wisconsin game? Whatever game it was where he visited Oregon. And I'm like,
yeah,
dude, what's your guy doing in out in Eugene right now? He's like, he's just having fun, man. Don't worry. He's 100% solid. You have nothing to worry about. I tell you, if you have something to worry about, you got nothing to worry about. And I kept hearing, you got nothing to worry about. Yeah, then I guess at this point I have nothing to worry about because he's not here. So I thought I had the answer right up until I didn't. Could be the same way with the Brian situation. I think that he's coming back as the offensive coordinator. I could be wrong. It could.
People behind their screens are going like this right now, bro.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of that out there. I get it.
But how can you, do you know how much NIL was a factor?
No, that's the hard part, right? That's the difficulty of it, is that I don't know exactly what Alabama offered him. I have no idea. That's the weird part. As I mentioned earlier in this show, you don't know. It's not like it's got to be reported somewhere and filed. That's a publicly available thing that I can look up. I'm with everybody else, or not everybody, but a lot of other people who tend to believe that that he benefited pretty well financially going to Alabama. I believe that. That's my personal opinion, but I don't have any I don't have any facts to support that. I don't. I would tell you if I did. I don't. So it's disappointing, but sorry, I don't have a better answer for you. But hope he does well. Hope he gets homesick and he wants to come back to Iowa.
The collective's always there if he.
Yeah, I hope he gets homesick. Hope he gets homesick. Although I've also was told that his family moved there too. I don't know if any of that's true. I don't. Well, I'm worried about the people inside the football facility, not the ones that are going somewhere else.
Brody, thank you for the super chat, Brody. Wish I would have found your channel during the season, caught the last post game, and really liked it. Looking forward to next season. Thank you, Brody, and appreciate you setting the example and supporting the channel by means of a super chat. Thank you for that. Reminder to everybody, we've been talking about joining the Swarm. If you want to support this channel by means of donations, you can do so. PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, credit card by means of the PayPal link, all in our description. Again, PayPal, Venmo, or Cash App to donate. You can also donate by Google. Super chat, super thanks, super sticker. That's with the system that YouTube has in place. So you can do so by means of the live stream. The Organic Veil Radio. Thank you, Brody, for the super chat. That is appreciated. The Organic Veil Radio. How do I find more information on the Swarm? I'm going to throw it up here in the live chat again. And when this show is posted, when we're done here on the air, I'm going to actually throw it up in the link description below the video. And I want to make this clear. Brad is not sponsoring this show this evening. If people want to know, why are you having this person on who's basically advertising for the Swarm? Long story short, it's because it's my show and I can do what I want. So I'm just making that clear because you are working, as you said, you are not making people miss this in the first part. So you're not making a profit off of this. No. This is part of how college football operates. So I wanted to get your perspective. I wanted you to educate, to inform. And if that turns into more more donations and more membership for you, so be it. Hopefully people appreciate it from both of our perspectives this evening, and I've enjoyed this conversation. So I just wanted to make that clear. ZJ says, if the NCAA changes the portal rules, which I thought they might be doing to limit number of times someone can transfer, will that benefit NIL a little more so it doesn't look like pay for play?
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, if they made it so that a kid has to sit out if they want to go to another school, the transfer portal would dry up quite a bit, right? And then there wouldn't be nearly as much, I'm going to go leave this school to go to that school because I know I'm going to get a better deal. I will tell you this. This isn't going to come as a surprise. There are the kids inside our football facility and basketball facility are getting hit up by other programs. Not the coach. I'm not saying the coaches, but by representatives of other programs. And like I would be a representative, for example. I'm not doing that, but there are people that are pulling at our players to leave Iowa to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that's the fight we're under. We were able to give 16, actually 18 offered NIL deals to football players before the bowl game. And that helped solidify our roster. Not saying all those people were going to leave. They may not have, but I think some of them might have. And the Swarm is making a difference with everybody's help.
Tyler says, Corey, did you see this? I guess this is towards me. Did you see Tyler Barnes follow Joshua DeBerry, possible DB ad? I did see that. Iowa fans like to scour who Tyler Barnes is following on social media, Brad. So that's not always an indication of that Iowa is going to offer said recruit. You brought up Rusty Feth though earlier. He's got offers from, I think what he's reported offers from West Virginia, Purdue. I don't believe he's reported an Iowa offer yet, but he is reportedly visiting. You just confirmed that here a few minutes ago.
Yeah, Nick Jackson's going to be in this weekend too.
Say that again.
Nick Jackson, the kid from Virginia. So
yeah. Who's the bigger? You could argue is the bigger fish of the two. I mean, I'm not saying Iowa doesn't need both, but
he's the one that's more decorated, right? 3-time All ACC linebacker. That doesn't suck. So yeah, it's really interesting with this portal stuff. If you think about it, just to give you some more insight, it all happens really fast. And watching the Iowa coaches, a player hits the portal, suddenly they're cutting up tape. They're trying to find out whether this person's a bad apple or not, right? And that's happened, by the way. Kids that wanted to come here, and they look good on tape, everything looks great, and then they find out they're a problem. And but they're just digging to make sure that the right kids come through those doors. And character matters to our coaches. They really, really put an emphasis on that. And it's been interesting to watch them work so hard, so fast, and so many hours during this season to try to find the right new pieces to add to the program.
Trayshawn Holden, can we just real quickly mention him? How accurate are the reports that Iowa? I mean, how involved was Iowa there? I'm assuming there was substance to that Kade was in contact with him.
There's some of what I mentioned before that could be attributable to that situation, but I can't speak too specific. But again, those kinds of things, it's a example like that where they have to find out real fast whether this person is somebody they want or not, because they're not going to, this isn't something you draw out for a year. You don't draw out for a month. I mean, it's quick. It's like speed dating, and you're getting married, right? I mean, think about that. That's really what it is. And so our coaching staff really works hard on that stuff. And so people that you think we're interested in, and we follow them on Twitter and we whatever else, that doesn't mean we're going to offer them and bring them in through the doors. It just means that there's initial interest, and then they have to go through all of their checklists of stuff, whether it's being able to play, whether it's academics, whether it's character. I mean, all that stuff. So it's
the record
a process.
Trayshawn Holden, whatever baggage he had, and that was a report out there, and it sounds like that's accurate. The baggage wasn't too much for Oregon to take on. So there are different values, different places, right? I mean, that's fair to say.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
there's other organizations will take on more risk,
Yeah.
Hey, we'll take, he may have been not so good for you, but I think he's going to be fine for us because we're going to be able to know how to handle that kind of a person.
Right. Kenton says, thank you, Corey. Thank you, Brad. Join the swarm. Thank you for the super chat, Kenton. Appreciate you being here as always. Let's get to Tony, who's been on hold for plenty of time. I don't know how long you've been on hold, Tony, but thank you for joining the show, Tony.
I always say, pay your bills first, Corey. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Tried to do that.
I'm a very basketball centric caller, just so you know, Brad.
Move a little bit further into the
camera.
camera.
Sorry, I'm trying to get that. There we go. Oh, hold on. Let's see. There we go. We're good. I'll sit right here. Here we go. Okay. First of all, like you mentioned those geolocators. Yeah. I hate those things, living in South Dakota, right on the Iowa border, and I can't sports bet because of those things are like right down to the square inch. I swear, like you have to go across. It's amazing. I had a question for you. You said you were drinking a beer. What were you drinking?
Stella Artois.
Okay. I'm drinking a Cold Snap because I'm in South Dakota and it's one degree exactly. I'm looking at my temperature thing right now.
Oh, there you go. Well, I think we got you by about 70 where I'm at.
I'm jealous.
Don't be. I had a hurricane destroy my house 3 months ago.
And I had a foot and a half of snow. So it is what it is. I'm glad you brought up Texas Tech basketball, though. Can you or were you involved with everything when we were recruiting Fardal? I don't know how you say his name or anything.
Yeah, I wasn't. I knew we were after him.
And I've heard there's a lot of stories out there, obviously, but
yeah.
Well, just real quick to piggyback off, this is Tony's time. It just that was one of my questions for you. Fran has made. I should say this. I've been told on good authority that Fran has been very open, not necessarily with the media, but he's been very open with certain organizations, certain events. He's been open about how he lost players during this past summer because of NIL. And I know one of those players that went to an SEC school. Well, you said it. The reported player had a 6-figure deal waiting for him there, and Iowa. That was part of the reason Iowa couldn't land him. He was not a portal recruit, but they lost. Akuba, the kid that went to Ole Miss. How accurate are those reports, and how far has the swarm come? Has Iowa's NIL collective?
It's really funny. I had we just did our press conference. I got home, everything was great. And Fran calls me, and this is when one of the kids was trying to decide, and he says, I think we're going to lose unless you've got this amount of money that you're ready to. I'm like, Fran, I've got like 4 members right now. And they're each giving me like $19 a month. I don't have what you want. I said, but maybe someday. So yeah, it was tough for him because we had just gotten started. And my hunch is, and again, we haven't talked about it specifically yet, but my hunch is that Fran's going to probably want a big in the portal next year. I mean, if I was to, again, we'll see. He may have other ideas. I don't know. And he's the one that calls the shots for sure. But looking at the roster, watching every game, a big might be something that we're going to need. Experience big next year. Phillip's gone. So that's just a hunch. And those guys, you got Freeman coming in, but true freshman, Big Ten. there's a little bit of development there. Bigs usually take a little while to develop, right? And so, it's rare that you get a freshman big that comes in there and takes the world over by storm in a Power 5 conference. And so it would make sense to me that a transfer big may be something that we're looking for, like we were really last year. We just didn't find.
And just real quickly, and then I'll hand it to you, Tony, if you got anything else. The Philip Rebracha story is fantastic because he's a kid who I'm guessing NIL had almost no impact on him. No. He would be so marketable if he had another year. Like if he wanted to jump in the portal after the year he's having, that dude is a hard-nosed North Dakota. Well, he's not a North Dakota native, but you know what I'm saying. Like, what a story for him to come in here and develop the way he's developed. And Iowa won't have it. If the NIL with the swarm now as it's in place, and what you guys, Brad, what you guys can offer Fran as it relates to the portal, they ain't gonna have no problems going to the portal this next offseason and getting the big. It's my opinion.
Let's hope not.
Not with what you've done with Luka Garza and Philip Rebracha, plus now with the NIL incentives. Tony?
No, and I do want to say the podcast did influence me. I'm now I think it's champion member. Does that sound right?
Nice.
You have another member due to the.
That's great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Yeah, by the way, just real quickly, Tony, that means you can't support me less. See, I'm gonna fall. I'm not.
No. I still, I support
I am not gonna fall. Listen, I am not gonna follow the example of Gary Barta. I'm still gonna have Brad on this show here.
Yeah.
Without fear of repercussions for donations to my show.
No, still like, subscribe, share this podcast because it helps everyone. Here. I'll always say donate. Yes.
Donate here. Yes. Anyways,
the more exposure to Iowa athletics, the better. I will say that. Something I've talked to.
By the way, one thing about Philip interrupting.
No, go ahead.
We haven't touched on foreign student athletes can't get NIL money.
Right.
Oh.
So Tory Taylor, Philip Rebracha, and Josh Okundule, none of those can get NIL money. How stupid is that rule?
It sounds like from what I've been told, Brad, there are ways, and you tell me if I'm wrong on this, if you're aware. It sounds like there are ways around that.
There are.
and I'm not saying anything specific, but don't be surprised if there are, don't be ignorant to the idea that there are some major foreign athletes at the college level. I'm not necessarily talking about Iowa, but that are still, like you said about other players, being tantalized with money to leave. Mm-hmm. I think it's fair to say that there are players that's happening that are foreign, because there are ways around that, right, Brad?
Yeah, and certain schools, certain collectives just disregard some of this. Others are very original. I think one of the schools not too far from where I live goes to Canada, and they take all their foreign student athletes up there and they shoot some commercials and get them paid for doing that in a different country.
It's funny you mentioned that school. I think I know what school you're talking about.
Yeah,
but anyway, it was a school that was in my mind too.
Probably. And so, the rule is that they could get paid. I mean, if you're trying to get it done, they can get paid. They can't get paid while they're here. And they need to be doing the work, whatever the work they're doing, they need to be doing that not here either. So they have to be doing something outside the United States and getting paid when they're outside the United States. So that's just the weirdest thing. And so it's difficult. And, people like Tory Taylor have marketability. I mean, he does.
Yep.
I mean, we've seen punting is winning shirts and stuff, right? So, I don't think we're going to punt much next year. At least that's the plan. I think I was told that we're not punting much. So, in any event, that's an interesting thing. But go ahead. Sorry, Tony, I interrupted you.
Oh no, I'm very patient. You're fine. I just have one comment, one question, and one thing I'll close on. The question is, how much do like the shoe deals and stuff like that? That's very prevalent in college basketball. How much is this going to like maybe cut down on stuff like that, or do you know much about stuff like that? Or
I haven't been approached with any shoe deals. I think, and again, they don't have to go through us. So it could be that some of the kids have a shoe deal that I don't even know about. The hard part for the kids, though, is if they don't go through us, anything they make through us, we give them a 1099. Like we basically button everything up for them. If they're getting paid from all different places, they're going to be getting either 1099s or they're getting something, from a lot of different entities that they're going to have to give to their accountants or whoever to try to pay their taxes. Yeah, these shoe deals, I don't know a lot about them, Tony. I'm sorry.
It's just the college basketball you hear about, like the kids that are on the Nike circuit or the Adidas circuit or whatever.
Oh yeah,
they're very faithful to the shoe brand.
No, my son does that. And that the AAU basketball circuit is somewhat filthy.
Yes. It's dirty as. Yeah.
My son plays for a Adidas team, and I can assure you that when it's time for him to pick a school, the head of the Adidas circuit is going to be insisting that he goes to an Adidas school, which again, they're getting paid by Adidas, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. But in any event, yeah.
And the suggestion I had, and this, you can take it, leave it, and disregard it if you want. I brought this up on a call-in show previous. I'd love to see the basketball team, or even you can do both basketball and football, rejuvenate the farewell tour. I don't know if you remember those, where they'd went around to all the small areas in Iowa, and after the season was over for basketball, you could have the kids play like an exhibition game. That's what they did, back in the late 90s. And you could set your table up out there. You could go to a basketball gym. I don't know how that works. More of the ins and outs. Of something like that.
The athletics probably won't let us do that.
Okay, but they used to do it in the back of the 90s.
Well, no, they might have the farewell tour, but they won't let Swarm.
Gotcha. Sponsor
they wouldn't
it,
let us put a table up in the Hawkeye huddle in the bowl game. So why would they let us? What makes you think?
I'm just trying to think. Well, could the high school that sponsors it let you do that? Because if the high schools do it, I don't know how all that works. I'm just throwing out an idea.
Why do you got to do it? You don't got to do it at Iowa.
Yeah. This is all at the high schools. Because I remember I'm from Fort Madison, small town Iowa, and they used to.
One of my next door neighbor in college is from Fort Madison. His name is Ryan Bowen.
Oh my! I went to his camp in Fort Madison. Like I'm like 2001 was I graduated, but like
you're a kid.
Everyone looks up. Oh yeah. I'm still a kid. Yeah, I'm in between you and Corey, so we'll put it that way.
Yeah, no, Ryan Bowen. I live right next to Ryan Bowen, J.R. Koch, and Kent McCausland. They were all roommates. So it was the golfers right next to the basketball players.
That's
wow, what a motley crew there.
I just didn't know how something like that could work. Like, more of the ins and outs of that. Like, I didn't know who sponsored those. I know Gary does because I brought it up with him on the, the post-game show before, like how a farewell tour, or even like you did like before the season, the football players go to local high schools. I don't know how something like that would work. I'm just throwing out an idea, and I don't know how that works. Yeah. But I love that you love March Madness. You go to the Bellagio each, as you can see in my background, I got 4 TVs set up for March Madness every year, and
good stuff.
But thank you for your time. I'll see you tomorrow night, Corey, and thanks, Brad. I appreciate your time as well.
Thank you.
Live with Gary tomorrow. Thank you, sir. All right, we are going to go. I'm starting to lose my mental focus here, Brad. We're going to go quick fire with a bunch of questions here.
Okay.
So if you can I always say that to Don Patterson, and then he goes on for 5 minutes. Love Don, but that's what he does. So
you can do the Budweiser hot seat. That's fine. Let's go.
Okay. So T. Hank says, any update on receivers? Do you think Iowa's done at this point? I think we'll take another receiver. I think we'll take another defensive back. I think we'll take another offensive lineman. If we can get Nick Jackson as a linebacker, then we're done.
I think 4 people is about the most we'd do, 1 of each.
Can I ask if there was if you know of any specific interest towards a guy that just transferred to Texas A&M, highly productive kid out of UTEP? Was there interest there?
I don't think so.
Okay. Justin says, until the recent drama, I didn't know about the swarm. So that's I've heard that from a couple people. So that is the whole situation. Didn't reflect well on Iowa, nor should it have. That's okay. But it did do. But I've heard people speculate on this, and see, this is proof. It actually did good things. Ryan says, what role does the iClub have in all of this?
None.
Much of any.
In fact, they won't. So here's the thing. So the iClubs get sponsored by the athletic department. They take money from the athletic department to run. Okay. And so if the iClubs actually try to raise money for us, then it could be construed that the athletic department is funding us. Kind of, sort of, indirectly, which, they can't do. So my luck with the iClubs has been not much. But I will tell you that at least one iClub, maybe 2, are thinking of disassociating themselves from the university so that they can be supportive of Swarm, because they realize that their donations would be better suited to Swarm rather than going to facilities. So we'll see what happens.
Cole, thank you for the super chat, Cole. Appreciate that donation. He says, how much do you pay attention? He's a Nebraska fan. How much do you pay attention to other Big Ten collectives, and do you guys talk to each other?
I pay attention. I'm jealous of Nebraska. They've got a pretty hefty supporter there. Nebraska is doing great in the NIL space. I try to pay attention to what's going on with the other Big Ten collectives as best that I can. Sometimes there's not a lot of information there, but there is a network, and there are weekly chats and info things where you'll get to get some insights. And so we do talk to each other. A lot of times it's around specific stuff like, hey, how are you handling your foreign student athletes? How are you, the things that you actually, we're trying to help each other navigate this space. I want to beat their brains in, including you at Nebraska. But at the same time, in the spirit of trying to be helpful, because most of these people running collectives aren't getting rich on it. And I'm the opposite of that. I'm just losing money. So we're just trying to help each other kind of get through it. So there is a certain amount of coordination. Coordination is not the right word. Collaboration is probably a better one.
T. Hank says, can the Swarm be used for a buyout? So
at this point, absolutely not.
Okay, the rumor was that Scott Frost was, his buyout was covered by a big donor, but
yeah,
that's possible.
Yeah,
that's different than what we're talking. That's different than what you as an organization.
Imagine that I've got big donor that helps us. It certainly could be that same donor
correct
paid for the buyout, but it wouldn't be through us.
Exactly. Yeah. D. Rullifson. So I think we talked about that. We just answered this question from someone else about iClub.
One time a month. Wow. Put me on the payroll.
Michael says, why not? See, all these people have ideas, and that's fine. Michael says, why not a fund to simply buy players to come like the SEC schools, like Spire? What is Spire?
I don't know. But I think he's basically saying, why not just have a fund to buy players and, like the SEC schools do, because it's illegal to do that. It's that's pay to play, right? So.
Yeah, Scott says, what about getting former players involved in advertising along with donations? Kirk has made a lot of 3 stars, millions. Have they been contacted? I saw somebody said, has George Kittle written a check yet?
Nope.
Why? Has there been efforts in that? Have there been efforts from your end to try to get former athletes to support the collective in that way, or is that not really?
That's actually been somewhat disappointing. Now, could George Kittle still come around for sure? He's in the middle of his season. He's got a kind of I think he's probably not going to be available this Sunday to chat. Probably not. So have I given up on that? No. But have a lot of former players donated? No. Is Dallas Clark agreed to be on my board? Yes. So am I hopeful that he will donate? Yes. It's really interesting, the psychology of it. I think some of the folks that are still playing now, while they may be for the student athletes getting paid, there's also a sentiment by some of them saying, well, I never got paid, so why should I, why is it my job to pay them? Let's let the boosters pay them,
Right.
I never got paid.
D. Rollison, I think we answered this question earlier about wrestling. You can certainly go back later and listen to, we talked about this a couple times. We really don't have a whole lot Brad doesn't have a whole lot to add on the wrestling end.
No.
Shay says, Brad, do you know if Fran intends for Iowa basketball, to be a strong player in the portal this year? Is it true that they have a nice chunk of money raised to do so?
I think that I can't speak for Fran, and it's always fluid, right? But I'm no dummy. I know what their roster looks like, and I do think that they're going to probably be a player in the portal. They were trying to be a player last year, and they just didn't get the right guy, or the guys they wanted. They just didn't get. Do they have a lot raised? We're working on that. It's a work in progress. We don't have much time either. We got to get going. Please help us.
T. Hank, thank you for the compliment. Steve says, what about partnering with other corporate sponsors? Clay says, ever consider using the plane that flies around Iowa City on game days for advertising? Carrie, she says you could make a promotional poster that could be downloaded and printed, put it on your website. Fans that care enough to check the website could share with local businesses.
It's interesting.
There's nothing wrong with ideas, but
I love it.
You've had a lot of time, a lot of experience in trying to build things. So
no, these are all good ideas. I appreciate them.
Always turning. Acriel says, would making merchandise and selling it separately on the website be a possibility? Is that happening right now?
Well, since you asked, one of the great gifts I got whenever I took this thing over and being called the Swarm, I didn't name that. It was the group I took this over with from named this the Swarm, and it turns out that somebody else has the rights to putting Swarm on apparel.
Okay.
A group out of Des Moines. And so the accord that I think we've struck with them is that we won't sell any Swarm merchandise. We'll just give it away. So we're not profiting on that stuff. They can alone profit on something that says Swarm. It won't have our logo on it. I think we could probably win a court case. Do I want to use donor dollars or my dollars to sue or to go down that lawsuit? No. So that's where we're at.
Carrie says, do you think it's partly a generational issue with Gary Barta? This is a fairly new way of approaching the organization. How we attract players. Change can be hard. Change is a big part of this, right?
Yeah.
Brad, this is new territory and it's come on quick.
No doubt about it. Carrie, I think you're onto it. Not saying that Gary's got his head completely in the sand or anything, but I also would tell you that he's not alone in that demographic with that sort of mindset, right? One of the hard parts about NIL is the people that have the most money that can contribute tend to be the ones that have the biggest negative connotation, or the most negativity towards it. So it's something that has to evolve.
Jesse says you have places like A&M shelling out millions for the #1 football recruiting class. Does Brad think this model is sustainable for NCAA athletics, or will there be future changes? You said earlier you think there'll be rule changes. You don't know how it'll look, but things will move.
Yeah. I think they'll move, and I've seen all sorts of thoughts. about it. And, one I saw today that I thought was interesting this is really wild, but what if, because, the whole Title IX issues that athletic departments have, you could actually have, what if the collectives basically replace the athletic department? They're completely not affiliated with the university at all. The collective pays the coaches. The collective pays the players. The collective rents the facility from the university to play the games. You don't have to worry about Title IX or anything else. And the collective runs the athletics department. Very interesting concept, right?
It's a big concept.
It's a big concept. May never, probably will never happen.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of thoughts out there, wild thoughts like that out there. I don't think it'll be sustainable to give those kinds of dollars to recruits. Imagine if you were one of those people that paid $1 million for a player, and I mean, you guys are complaining about Brian Ferentz, and we've won 9 games on average the last 2 years. Well, Texas A&M just won like 4 games. Imagine writing $1 million check and then we win 4 games. I mean, it would be torches and pitchforks, right? Oh, there's this Erica person. I've always wanted to talk to this Erica person, because the one I listened to a chat and she was on the whole time, or a lot of the time. And I was expecting to get to talk to this Erica person tonight, but I guess this is as good as we get to do.
Erica said, okay, I think I know what you're talking. Erica says, I seem to remember that we had someone else coming from Virginia. I don't think you're talking about is it Nick Jackson that's coming in?
So I think where she's going
He's talking
is
about
Dyson Parker.
Yes.
And he was committed to Virginia and decommitted from Virginia and is now on Iowa's campus now, enrolled at the University of Iowa.
And this, you can kind of get us up to speed. The difference between a transfer because he was on the Virginia website. I mean, so he was apparently had been accepted.
Yeah.
He had enrolled, right? Am I correct in saying he had enrolled?
I don't know that for sure.
So are there complications with that when you have with Dejan Parker's situation? I guess for part A was his situation NIL, was that a factor there? And
no.
Okay. And
not to say that he won't get NIL money while he's here, but I don't think it was a factor I don't think that it was a factor in his decision.
Okay.
Well, or if it was just, hey, I know they've got a good NIL program, talking to the student. He didn't ask me. I guess that maybe the better way I could say it. We did not have a discussion.
I'm guessing he didn't have a whole lot of contact with Jackson, would be my guess.
No, I
didn't answer Erica's question.
Yeah.
Brian says, ask former Hawks to go on podcast to mention the Swarm. Kittle was on the Pat McAfee show recently. 2 seconds would be huge. Yeah. Got to be willing to do that, right? That's a big ask for some of these high-profile guys.
Yeah, it is.
Big Bolivar says, I think people don't understand the whole thing. I was even unclear on it. This was very informative.
Good.
Good to hear. Carrie says, what about a meet and greet with a player? If people sign up at a certain level, obviously that would have to be a fairly high dollar amount, or it'd get too much for the players.
We already do that. At our tailgates for football, we bring basketball players in for a meet and greet for people at a certain level. Take pictures, autographs, whatever. We haven't done it with football players yet because they've just now gotten out of season. But that will happen at a basketball game or two in the next month.
Dennis says, always the same callers. Now, Dennis is a premium subscriber here. Thank you for your subscription, Dennis, and your support. But I always say to people who complain about the same callers, it's always people that never call. So it's like, if you want to support by different callers, you got to actually call. We actually have to be, we have hundreds of people watching, thousands of people watching the shows at times, but people got to call. So anyways, I do appreciate the callers who have been here. And thank you, Dennis, for being a premium subscriber. And he says, are you the only NIL Swarm collective? Can you tell us a little bit about the Iowa, is it called the Iowa City NIL?
Yeah.
Give us an idea of the difference there.
So that organization is run by, I can tell you what I know. What I know is that there's an organization called Yoke, for-profit entity. I think they're out of the Northeast, and they've gone to a lot of universities and set up like a message board and something else, and players you can become a member, and I think it's $200 ish a year to be member of that club, and student athletes might post stuff on that message board from time to time. I haven't heard a lot that's been happening with ours. I guess I get the impression that I shouldn't say it's dying a slow death. I don't know. I guess I just haven't heard much about it at all since its inception. I don't know what else to say other than I just haven't heard much about them. I can tell you that all three of the head coaches endorse us 100%. I'm not trying to be competitive here. I just don't know what the NIL club there is really doing. But other than that, we are the only one, and I know that we are the most substantial one at this point.
LFG, you guys are still going. Yes, we are. We're wrapping this thing up.
Yeah,
we've hit the 2.5 hour mark. Jake, thank you for being a premium subscriber, and says great show. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
Lemansky says, Corey, can you have Brad on again? He adds, thanks for having Brad on as a guest. Thank you for the super chat, Lemansky. Very much appreciated. The generous super chat from Lemansky, who called in earlier. One of our regular callers who we always appreciate having on here during our post-game coverage with Coach Close and, of course, Coach Patterson, and on the Hawkeye Hangout shows right here. So thank you for that, Lemansky. Is there anything I didn't cover? If I missed your comment in the chat, I apologize. I had a lot of comments, which is great. Anything I didn't cover, Brad, that you feel? I mean, obviously, I guess one thing that I had written down that I wanted to touch on, Iowa just announced a new NIL Marketplace initiative. It sounds like that's pretty much in unison with what universities are doing across the country. It kind of is it fair to say it kind of enables individual student athletes the ability to, or I should say the organization to be able to profit on individual deals as a person. I mean, you get what I'm saying there?
I think it's so that a student athlete can go out there and market themselves in some way, and the way I understand it might be that they could say, hey, I'll call and wish you a happy birthday for $10, and then you sign up, and then they'll call you on your birthday or something.
Like
I think it's stuff like that. I don't know that it's I don't know that it's going to move the needle. It's not going to get players. I can tell you that. I don't know what it's going to do, to be honest. And I don't want to disparage it. I welcome any and all opportunities for these kids to make money. But I think it's an off-the-shelf product that exists in a lot of different places, and student athletes can explore that if they want, and who knows what they'll get from it. I don't know, but I don't think that it's going to be the kinds of dollars that we're talking about in the Swarm.
Yeah, Iowa Hawkeyes NIL Marketplace, brought to you by Open Doors, which I'm guessing is a for-profit organization. It has to be for-profit. They're doing stuff with universities everywhere. Okay. Well, again, thank you, Lemansky, for the super chat. Jesse says, what is Brad's prediction on a record for Iowa football? Do you care to throw that into the mix since it was asked?
Sure, we're gonna win more than 10 games next year.
Okay. Put you on the record. I'm right.
That includes the bowl.
Regardless of staff, I know you said earlier you don't believe we'll have staff changes. We'll see on that. We're going to find that out here.
We've got a pretty favorable schschedule.
A
favorable schedule. I think we've got a better roster. I think we're weak at linebacker currently on defense, but Phil Parker's going to find a way. I think our offense is going to be substantially better. I think Deontay Vines is going to take a big step forward. I think Luke Lachey is going to be the best tight end in the Big Ten, and Eric All is going to be right there with him. I think our line's going to be a year older and stronger, and Caleb Johnson's going to run all over people. So, and you got Kade McNamara. We've got a quarterback that took his team to the Big Ten championship, won a Big Ten championship, and took him to the college football playoff. This is going to be a great season. I'm fired up.
And this is after having a beer. You're still fired up. Usually that.
Oh, I'm more fired up after beer.
Again, thank you everybody being here. I apologize if I didn't get to your question. We do need to wrap up here. Organic Veil Radio, thank you for the compliment. Everybody who's been very complimentary. Cyhawk, C Money, thank you, Brad, and appreciate you supporting the show here. Carrie, very active in our chat. Just everybody, thank you for being here this evening. And again, if anybody wants to find more information on the Swarm Collective, which is the primary driving force for Iowa football players to profit off name, image, and likeness, which is a major factor in recruiting for Iowa basketball. We're talking men's and women's hoops and Iowa football. Certainly go to, you go ahead and give your little spiel here.
iowaswarm.com and become a member today.
And I'm going to throw that up. So I put it in the live chat earlier. As soon as this show posts, I'm going to add the link so you can click it directly from the description below this video. So if you're interested in doing that, please consider it. And of course, to support our show, as I say, each and every show, you can shop Amazon with us by means of the link in the description below. We also, of course, have ways to donate by means of PayPal, Cash App, Venmo. You can become a premium subscriber by clicking the join button next to the channel name here on YouTube. And of course, support the channel by sponsoring as well. You can reach out to me from the eye of the storm at outlook.com. That's from the eye of the storm at outlook.com. A reminder to please hit the like button, subscribe if you've not done so. All of these longer shows are podcasted on your favorite platforms, Spotify, Anchor, etc. You can follow me on Twitter at From the Hawkeye and at From the Hawkeye, and Instagram From the Hawkeye of the Storm on Facebook. And of course, I will be live with former Iowa assistant coach Gary Close tomorrow following Iowa and Michigan State. Hawkeyes in need of a bounce back victory, Brad. So we'll hope to get one tomorrow evening against. That's a tough place to play, as you know. The
real tough.
Doesn't get much tougher than
the Breslin Center's House of Horrors for Iowa basketball. Although I enjoyed watching the Chris Street special and watching and reliving the big comeback that we had there.
Incredible.
That January.
The two Michigan teams. What a pair of games following a
fantastic,
terrible tragedy. So,
yeah.
Brad Heinrichs of the Swarm Collective. Brad, thank you for the better part of 3 hours talking about Hawkeye athletics and your initiative and just Hawkeye football, Hawkeye basketball, etc. And we'll look forward to hopefully really positive news down the road, in part because of what you're doing. So thank you and appreciate you joining the show.
Thanks for having me. I'd love to do it again sometime.
All right, folks, for Brad Heinrichs, I'm Corey Brad here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. We'll talk to you tomorrow night.